Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on ACPS TV and streamed on ACPS YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. Please pause for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We move now to item 2.03, approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve as written.
Second.
Do I have consensus? Thank you. Item 2.04, establish agenda order. Do I have a motion?
Motion to establish agendas printed.
Do I have consensus? All right, thank you. Now we move to item 2.05, recognitions. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. For this recognition, I call Jody Reese. Did I Reese? Thank you, up to the podium.
Good evening, Ms. Reese.
Good evening. Good evening, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. I am Jody Rissy, and I'm the proud supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services, and I have the honor tonight to present this evening's special board recognition. Before I go any further, I'd like to ask the members of the board and Dr. Bedell to please come forward. Every day across our school system, I get to see amazing work the members of our Food and Nutrition Services team do to provide students with healthy and nutritious meals. This work starts early in the morning with breakfast, and it continues throughout lunch. In all, we serve about 42,000 meals on any given school day. There are days, however, that the work just doesn't fit into a nice, neat schedule. I refer to our team as a group of superstars, but on these days, our stars shine the brightest. As I am sure you remember, there was a gas leak along Mountain Road in Pasadena that caused a few headaches for our schools, our staff, and our community on the afternoon of September 2nd. It was the last day of the first week of school. As BG&E crews handled the immediate problem and police worked to help motorists navigate the snarled traffic, our school system leaders were busy making and altering plans to get students home from schools on the peninsula. Part of these plans included the potential to feed students who remained at Chesapeake High School and Chesapeake Bay Middle School. As the hours ticked forward toward the evening, it became evident that we were, in fact, going to have students still with us at dinner time. We had the food in our school kitchens, so it was not an issue at all. But we needed to get the staff to school to get ready to serve the students' meals. That's where Sandy Shore and Misty Pelly come to the rescue. They navigated the traffic and all the other obstacles to get to Chesapeake Bay Middle School. And I should tell you, it's not even the school they work at on a daily basis. With little time to do the work before the students arrived to the cafeteria, Sandy and Misty prepared hundreds of pizza sticks which is one of our students' favorite items, with some green beans. They also set out fruits, fruit juice, and milk to ensure that the 200 students remaining at school had something to eat and drink. Sandy and Misty put aside their own schedules to focus on the students and to ensure they were fed and they can have some relaxation on what was a very long day for everyone. Their work also reassured the parents. We would continue to take care of their students as long as it was needed. Sandy and Misty are the true shining stars. They who epitomize the all means all mentality, and I'm so, so proud to have them part of my team. As they come forward, please join me in thanking them for going above and beyond for our students.
Don't go away. Come back. Oh, but there's more. Now, which one is Sandy? Miss Shore. Your recognition. Oh. And you must be, Miss Polly. There you go. Thank you. And I think if we split up a little bit here.
And you all can just be front and center right here.
And do we want?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Be there.
Dane,
Dane.
get Dane in there.
Yep.
See how we're doing, guys.
It's
I
like the
think we're
market.
kind
Yeah,
of a
right.
little, can I get, let's see, Mr. Slipper, can you come over on this side for me?
Any place.
Thank you. And Miss name is Shawhan on this end. Right there. And that looks a lot better. Okay. And gonna get Miss Frank and Miss Ellis to switch for me. All right. And Zach, a little tighter on the Just autograph, that's fine. All right, everybody, we'll take a few of these. Just keep looking this way, big smiles. Great, great. And we're all done. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I would like to take a moment to recognize the representative from the peninsula, Ms. Frank, who'd like to offer a few words.
Very briefly, I just wanted to say what an amazing place Pasadena is to raise a family. And that's because of the amazing and kind people who live there and who work there, and for the people who help us in the difficult times. And that day was very difficult. I was away from my own home for about 8 hours. I couldn't get back. So we are so thankful for you for stepping up and taking on the important task of feeding kids when parents were unable to get to them. I know how worried many parents were, but to have the reassurance that students were safe, that they were fed, and that they were cared for is what made a difficult situation annoying, but not a crisis. On behalf of the AACPS parents and the Pasadena community, please accept our most heartfelt gratitude.
Thank you both for everything you did that day and for everything I'm sure you do every day. And I'm sure many of your colleagues do the same. And we're so grateful to you, and you make us very, very proud. Thank you. All right. Item 2.06. The TAC president, Ms. Disney Bates.
I'm back again.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Bedell, Dr. Tobin, Board of Education. I'm Nicole Disney Bates, TAC President. I wanted to thank you for adding me to the agenda today and our association. Collaboration. It's a funny word. I recently told my kids to put away their laundry. This collaboration ended with them changing all of their drawers on each other. It wasn't the collaboration I was looking for, but it was a team effort. I'm happy to say that collaboration often means working together for a common goal. When I came in August, I shared with you, as I have many times before, that we are a sinking ship. But our ship is being held together by our teachers, our related service providers, our administration, and support staff. But the good news, just like it is today, is that our ship is not sunk. And, as I said before, collaboration will be the thing that helps us float yet again. I'm proud to announce that we have worked together to find some creative solutions to some problems. As we know, special ed has been having some challenges. We, as a group, both AACPS and TAC, have worked together to create a mentorship program so that our veteran teachers can work together with conditionally certified teachers and support them. We're going to begin working on providing foundations in the schools so that all students can be provided with this phonics intervention. And for those who volunteer to take on extra caseload, they're going to get paid. These are all ways to make our workload more tenable. In addition, and I hope to hear a sigh, we have been talking about Brightspace. And during this, we have made some significant progress. We are very proud of this progress that we've made, and we hope that all educators feel a little relief as of Friday. Our ship, it depends on us to continue to collaborate, to work together, to hear each other. Our students, they depend on us. Our teachers, they depend on us. Our communities, they too depend on us. We have many challenges ahead of us. And with these challenges come great opportunities. We should take advantage of these opportunities to have dedicated, qualified educators who have sufficient working conditions that allow them to teach and do their job well and meet the diverse needs of our students. As usual, I'm going to end quickly with a quick story. My students, the ones that I told you of, the ones that I was their person, I have some good news about them. While I was their person, and only I would do most days, I had a great team. And that team, we collaborated and we worked together to meet those students, my students, their needs. And those students, because of me and my team, they thrived. So again, I'm so glad to see that we too are beginning to thrive. Thank you. And again, we're better together.
Thank you. All right, we will move now to item 3, public hearing, superintendent's recommended FY 2024 capital budget and 6-year capital improvement plan. We have one speaker signed up under this item, Ms. Lisa Van Buskirk.
Good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Bedell, Lisa Van Buskirk of Start School Leader, Anne Arundel County. I'm here to talk about what I do not see on the 6-year plan, but was recommended by Prismatic Services in their 2020 report. Specifically, recommendation 20, quote, prepare, schedule, fund, and execute an AACPS facility master plan element for student transportation facilities. The plan element will include, but not be limited to, identification of more centrally located bus maintenance, repair, fueling, and bus parking sites for possible purchase by AACPS, and broad programmatic delineation of key bus transportation functions for routine maintenance, all types of repairs, fueling, tool and part storage, bus washing, bus parking, etc., end quote. Prismatic's initial estimates for a 15-acre industrial site was over $13 million for land acquisition and $24 million for construction. With the upcoming change from fossil fuels to electric buses described by Mr. Shaknovich on Monday, infrastructure for electrical charging would also need to be included in the facility plan, but was not anticipated by Prismatic. which would impact any potential cost estimates. It's my understanding the state would not participate in cost sharing for such a site, so we will need local government fiscal support for such a necessary endeavor. Many politicians are claiming to want to help the school system with regards to busing this year. Surely having adequate bus maintenance facilities should be part of that support by the county. I would also be remiss on the topic of facilities if I did not remind you of finding and recommendation number 21, which found the offices for transportation, quote, not an appropriate work environment, and calls into question the decision to reopen it as a transportation office in 2012. Thus, the recommendation to include it as part of the master planning for the new transportation office. Retention of maintenance and transportation office staff depends on providing them with a safe environment in which to work. Will this board add a placeholder to the 6-year capital plan for a bus maintenance facility and transportation office? And if not, then what is the board's plan to address this inadequate transportation support infrastructure as identified by Prismatic Services? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I failed to read the opening comments about speakers, so let me catch up here. Speakers will be allotted 2 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. The yellow light below me will shine when you have 30 seconds remaining. The red light below me will shine and you will hear a tone when your time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. Please speak only on the topic for which you signed up to speak. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer sessions with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. Now we move on to item 4, public comments. Under item 5.04, Superintendent's Report, Ms. Christina Corona.
Good evening. My name is Christina Corona. This is my 21st year in AECPS. Over the years, workload has grown to unsustainable levels. Just today, I was talking to one of our new special educators to see if she was okay. I could just see it in her face that she was overwhelmed. She told me she was struggling to keep up with the workload of her co-taught classes and looming IEP deadlines. Daily, I talk to colleagues who feel the same overwhelming pressures. Large class sizes. I have co-taught classes in the mid to high 30s. Special educators with caseloads in the mid 20s. Due to the teacher shortage, staff are being reassigned back into the classroom to teach out of area. I do appreciate that there is now an effort on the board's part to collaborate with our union around the burdensome bright space mandates. I will tell you, though, that it doesn't matter how many Tuesday tips we get, the platform will always continue to be too cumbersome. It simply was not designed for daily use by K-12 educators. Last December, I testified on this very same topic of workload, asking you to implement sustainable solutions rather than quick fixes. Just as you're listening to our bright space concerns, I urge you to also collaborate with our union to find the long-term solutions that will keep educators in AECPS, because educators no longer want to be exploited. Even at this very moment that you're working to fill vacancies, there are current employees looking for new jobs, considering resigning or even early retirement. When Dr. Bedell was first hired, I listened to his 2016 NPR interview. He said something that I've always thought but never heard an administrator say. He said the vast majority of educators start their careers by having heart with the right intentions. And here's the key point. He said it's the system that frustrates them and makes them lose their heart. That it's the responsibility of school system leaders to help educators keep hope by giving us the structures we need to feel supported in order to do our jobs well for our students. Dr. Bedell's understanding of the root cause of the current teacher shortage, which is really a shortage of support and respect, makes me cautiously optimistic. However, it's not enough to understand the root cause. I urge you to act. Educators are at breaking points. We need to know that you support improving our working conditions. This will help our students to thrive, because students suffer when they cannot achieve their full potential in the classroom without dedicated educators who are thriving rather than just surviving. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6.01, transportation update, Ms. Stephanie Dorsum and Ms. Lisa Van Buskirk.
Sorry, I'm a little bit taller than everybody else. Good evening, I'm Stephanie Dorsum. I'm a North County cluster parent for the past 18 years. I'm in my last year. Because the bus and traffic situation has been so bad at our high school this year, I just began collecting data. I know most of you have gotten emails from me about the outages amongst the high school, and I searched for more information. Here's what I found. First, there's an Anne Arundel County school document from 2019, which is about closing the achievement gap, or is noted in the document about the opportunity gap. This document also discusses the barriers that people living in poverty may experience, such as parents working 2 to 3 jobs and limited transportation. Second, I've been tracking the high school bus outages. North County, the high school with the highest free and reduced meal, has been consistently out 10 to 12 buses. That is a third of our 35 allotted buses. Yet other wealthier schools have had 0 to 2 buses out during this time. Today, North County, Meade, and Annapolis, who are above 50% farm rate, accounted for over half of the bus outages. Third, I made a crude map of the North County cluster and where the buses are out. And as I expected, it was in the poorest of our area. The bus shortage is a national issue, but this data clearly demonstrates that we are further impacting our poorest students, which will only serve to widen the opportunity gap. By Friday, these buses will have been out for 10% of the school year. What will happen to a student who missed all this time? Are we really okay with telling our poorest families that there is no bus, no definite time a bus will come, and no options? We had a parent send her student to school by Lyft, was paying $17 to get him there, and she couldn't afford to get him home. I've been asked by my legislators what my solution would be. 1, prioritize buses to our poorest areas. 2, consider incentives to drive in the poorer areas, similar to the way we pay teachers to teach in Title I schools. If the pay difference is the reason we have, then we need to hold the contractors accountable. Since the state legalized vans, this option should be explored immediately. Offer alternate ways for a student unable to get to school to receive an education. What we can't do is allow socioeconomic discrimination to continue by denying our poorest students access to education. I'm worried about these students who do not live in my home or in my neighborhood, and I hope you are as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Board of Education and Dr. Bedell, Lisa Van Buskirk of Star School Leader, Anne Arundel County. I'm encouraged by Dr. Bedell's updated entry plan, which notes that he read the 2020 audit of transportation services by Prismatic and even had a meeting last week with them, school staff, and a few Board of Education members regarding school hours and transportation. It is important for the entire community to recognize that changes in school bus routes are just one part of a larger effort to improve transportation services implemented this school year. The board was provided with a spreadsheet about 2 years ago with the status of implementation of all of Prismatic's recommendations, and in it, it references the fiscal year 2021 budget. Can the board request an update to the implementation status of all 27 of Prismatic's recommendations as we face fiscal year 2024? I hope that in the meeting with Prismatic Services, they were able to offer insight into how other school systems, large and small, are addressing the bus driver shortage and other transportation issues facing AACPS. I believe there are opportunities to improve the communication between contractors and schools regarding who has opted in and are eligible for transportation. I've heard that some schools and drivers have rosters, but many do not. I hope that AACPS will continue to improve its communication with contractors, schools, and families to clarify ridership eligibility and assignments. As I mentioned in my testimony last time, as well as a 2018 op-ed, can the school system pilot a GPS-connected smartphone app to better inform families and students as to bus shortages? If not implemented under the current transportation funds, will it be included for fiscal year 2024? Besides the bus driver shortage, which is causing increased traffic at schools, what other factors are delaying buses along the routes? I drive by Riva Road and Aris T. Allen at 8:45 every day, and I see the traffic go from Riva Road all the way back to Solomon's Islands, and there's a number of school buses in that. So I suspect that Riva Road lights need some realignment for you all to get here, even to this building. So what else do we need to change in our operations to address not just school hours, but the traffic as well? Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, on item 6.02, FY 2024 Board Budget Priorities, Ms. Karina Zati.
Good evening. I'm Karina Zotti, PBW at Annapolis High School. I'm here to talk about what your priorities should be in this next budget cycle. Your budget must focus on recruiting and retaining educators. There are over 200 teachers vacancies for a reason. There is no teacher shortage. There is a salary shortage. High inflation impoverishes workers. In 2020, inflation in the US was 1.2%. In 2021, it was 4.7%. During this time, we didn't receive a COLA. From August 2021 to August 2022, the average inflation was higher than 8.6%. For that period, we only received a 4% COLA. As a result, what we could buy in a grocery store in January 2020 was significantly more than what we can buy now due to the lack of recomposition of salaries. In addition to inflation, loyal AAPCS educators also suffer for 13 years by being behind steps, resulting in the depreciation of their salaries and pension benefits. Through salary recomposition, AACPS can have more competitive salaries to minimize the loss of even more educators. AACPS educators deserve to be paid competitively. We adapted fast to the pandemic. We were there for our students because we value and recognize the importance of schools and education. We have adjusted to the increased social and emotional needs of students and worked to catch up students who experience learning loss upon returning to in-person instruction. If you say you value educators, you need to budget for a COLA that exceeds inflation for the second semester of 2022, which is over 8%, and first semester of 2023, which is optimistically projected to be 3 to 5%. Remember, there is no teacher shortage. There is a salary shortage. We understand that. I hope you do too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment for this evening. And so now we will move on to our reports. Item 5.01, our CRASC report. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. My name is Michelle Fidel. I'm a freshman at Chesapeake High School. My pronouns are she, her, and I am very grateful to serve as CRASC Secretary of Education. CRASC started the school year with our first virtual town hall meeting on September 7th. We had participation from all over AACPS. We had the chance to address some student concerns, and our executive team participated in parliamentary procedure training led by our president, Brenton Mead. On September 6th and 19th, our Constitution Revisions Committee met. The CRC discussed our procedures around student member of the board election and guidelines for campaigning via social media. Students and SGA advisors are welcome to join us at our next meeting on Monday, September 26th at 6:30 p.m. We are thrilled to announce that the CRASC Communication Department has posted our new monthly CRASC newsletter. Check out the first newsletter, Back to School edition, on the CRASC website, www.acps.org/CRASC. If any SGA would like to be featured in our monthly newsletter, they can fill out the SGA Spotlight Google form. Our next newsletter will be published on October 3rd. In addition, CRASC has created a Q&A and interest form. If a student has any question for any department or exec team members, they can fill out the Q&A form and a team member will respond to their questions as soon as possible. Questions may be featured in our newsletter for the benefit of the student body. Students interested in participating in any CRASC department are asked to complete the interest form. Let's Talk Justice hosted an information night on September 12th, where students were able to learn more about the organizations, action steps taken since June 2020, and its mission to engage, educate, and empower the students. There are countless opportunities for students passionate about equity and social justice to get involved with Let's Talk Justice. More details can be found in the Let's Talk Justice Brightspace.
The first ACPS Pride Alliance meeting of the school year will be held on September 29th at Barnett High School from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Interested students can speak to your school's GSA club sponsor or check out the flyer located in the AACPS Pride Alliance Brightspace. AACPS has rebooted Teen Talk, last airing over 10 years ago. Show host Cameron Chair was thrilled to interview our wonderful superintendent, Dr. Bedell, as her first guest. Additionally, the show is asking for students to submit brief videos sharing their favorite classes, their extracurricular activities or sport they participate in, or simply why they're excited to be back in school this year. The first episode will air in October on AACPS TV. Be sure to follow at AACPS Teen Talk on Instagram. We are also elated that the Anne Arundel County Youth Advisory Council is now an official county board. This is a significant victory for the youth in Anne Arundel County, and we are grateful to the County Council for passing Bill 77 to 22 with near anonymous support. The Student Service Learning Leadership Team, in collaboration with the school system, county, and Global Youth Justice, has successfully hosted the county's annual 9/11 Flag of Honor ceremony. Despite the torrential rain, students, teachers, honor guests, and the audience stayed committed to this monumental event. The event was then followed by a day of service where students worked with numerous local nonprofits like Reach Across America, Operation Gratitude, Unity Bands, and more. Thank you to all of our ACPS students, teachers, and community partners for your cherished support in the implementation of this event. After a successful spring voter drive, AACPS is partnering with the Board of Elections to offer a voter registration drive at high schools between October 3rd and 17th. Students must be at least 16 years old in order to complete the forms to register to vote. Students should come prepared with the last 4 digits of their social security number or a state or government issued ID. Check out www.aacps.org/vote drive for more information and look for posters at your school with the date or time and location. Through the diligent work of the Crask Legislative Department, Crask submitted testimony on County Council Bill number 74 to 22 General Provisions, Flags on County Property, in support with the amendments to limit restrictions and promote inclusivity. The bill was pulled prior to the vote, yet we received positive feedbacks regarding our testimony for the County Council members. Now, as the school year is underway and the first day of fall is upon us, which is actually tomorrow, we wish to thank all who strive to create safe and inclusive environment where all students can support their school and are able to enjoy athletics and other extracurricular events that promote a sense of community. Thank you, and see you in my next class update in October.
Thank you, Ms. Fidel. Item 5.02, CAC report. Ms. Howard.
Good evening, everyone. President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, fellow board members, and Dr. Bedell. For the record, my name is Tanisha Howard, the chair of the Citizen Advisory Committee, otherwise known as the CAC. On behalf of the CAC body, I am pleased to have this opportunity to share and update the board on our recent activities. But before I do, as a reminder to the public, the CAC conducts our virtual Meetings on the second Monday of each month from 6:45 to 8:45 p.m. Our 2022-2023 meeting schedule is currently posted on our AACPS CAC webpage, which is located under the board tab on the AACPS website. To attend any upcoming meeting, a request can be made to the CAC Secretary, Anthony Petroselli, via email at cacsecretary@aacps@gmail.com. Again, cacsecretary@aacps@gmail.com. This information is also located on our webpage. The CAP membership consists of 18 returning members and 13 new members appointed this past summer. In its third year, the CAC held its new member orientation on August 11th, successfully onboarding new members to train and introduce them to the foundation and the various aspects of our committee. This session provided the new members with ample time to adjust and acclimate to their roles and be fully prepared to participate in the first official CAC regular meeting in our regular session. The CAC held its first regular meeting of the 2022-2023 school year virtually on Monday, September 12th. We truly were honored to have the welcome address by the board president, President Tobin, to commence our year and witness some of our activities. CAC leadership likewise took the opportunity to establish our direction and meeting operations for the year, including introducing our new internal committees. Perspectives and Impact Planning Committee, which is charged with developing our speaker series for the remainder of the year with the lens to support our continued legacy agenda, featured as a tribute, a CAC tribute to the late Honorable Candace C.W. Antwine. And Education Policy Watch, which is focused on board, MSDE, and MABE, as well as local counting activities to ensure real-time relevant information is provided to our subcommittees, sharing focus area and scope is communicated. We believe both these new features will posture the CAC to be exposed to additional resources and proactively support our overall mission. Launched by the CAC last year, celebrating, of course, I told you, the late Honorable Candace C.W. Antwine's memory to embrace, embody, and celebrate all of AACPS's diversity in a more cohesive and empathetic community. The Perspectives and Impact Focus series premiered this year with the All Means All Driving Value featuring Bob Mosier, the AACPS Chief Communications Officer. As we commence our year, we wanted to explore the channels of communication within AACPS to better understand opportunities available for effective outreach. The knowledge broadens our collective experiences, aiming to improve our school system and communities through fostering awareness, encouraging participation, and empowering us to support quality education for all learners, regardless of external influences and personal journeys. The CAC's first charge was establishing our membership committees for the upcoming year, with special advisory areas, hate and bias, ready to read, early literacy, and wellness lens. We also established the board committees, the policy and equity. The board policy area subcommittees, which report to board policy committee, will be determined later this month and will be established at future regular meetings to meet the requirements for the completion and delivery of the work scope assigned according to their respective timelines. At this time, the CAC would like to acknowledge the student board member, Zachary McGrath. Congratulations on your election and appointment to a premier board of education. We are thrilled to have an opportunity to work with you and ecstatic you will continue your predecessors, Drake Smith and Bumi Amsori, charged to chair the Board Equity Committee. It's invaluable having a student perspective who are by far impacted as primary stakeholders of policy and its administration. We understand this summer has been very busy ushering in a new superintendent, Dr. Mark Bedell. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you here with the Anne Arundel County Public School System. We embark on a new journey with your strategic oversight built on a foundation of immense experience in diverse and divergent environments. The CAC is utterly excited and the board selection and look forward to the future endeavors with you in this role. To the board and on behalf of the CAC, thank you for your continued support, continued engagement, and continued outreach so we can be most impactful. Every year continues to top the prior, and it is my honor and privilege to work with talented, motivated, and consummate professionals, letting their passion shine through in the CAC mission. We look forward to this year striving to excel and exceed standards set by prior year's committee. The work ahead, prepped by past membership, will provide foundational tools for this year's group to be poised for success, delivering assistance required by the board to meet its overall goals and address the challenges at hand and into the future for AACPS. As always, we welcome and appreciate your feedback and look forward to another year with purpose, direction, and results. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Okay, that brings us to item 5.03, President's Update. I would like to begin by sending a special note of thanks to Dr. Pamela Brown, Executive Director for the Anne Arundel County Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, for organizing and hosting Anne Arundel County's first Early Childhood Summit on September 15th. I was honored to participate as a panelist and to hear the extraordinary input from so many around our county, including parents, educators, child care providers, and child development experts on what we need to do to ensure that we support the development of all our children from birth onwards. This is an important partnership for all of us at AACPS because we know from all the data out there that the more exposure and support children and their families have from the earliest stages of development, the more likely they are to be ready to succeed and thrive in school. I very much look forward to the ongoing work that will emerge from this initial meeting. Additionally, as a follow-up to the last meeting and the preliminary staff presentation that was given then, I want to mention that the board continues to have more conversations about redistricting, including possible ways in which members of the Citizens Advisory Committee may participate in the process. Finally, I would like to note that today marks the International Day of Peace. On this day, as we consider that so many in the world are currently living in the midst of war and strife, it seems fitting to remember a quotation by a famous educator, Dr. Maria Montessori. Averting war is the work of politicians. Establishing peace is the work of education. My hope is that those of us who are about the work of education will continue to do our part to build a more peaceful world. And with that, we will move to item 5.04, the superintendent's report. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to thank all of our speakers who came today and took out time to, offer your remarks on these really critical issues that we all are trying to work to solve. As I am now, I think, concluding my 5th week, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm into week 6 of the entry plan. We post it every Friday for any and everybody to see who I'm meeting with, what I'm doing within the community. And there are a couple of things that's not up there that I want to share with you. One is transportation. I am actively working with our transportation department to think outside the box around how we can address our inability at this point to get every single one of our kids to school on a daily basis, and to do everything in our power to not perpetuate some of the disparities that one of our speakers spoke of earlier today. And so we are looking at, and we've talked about this before, you're going to hear a presentation today, but minivans, it's easy to say, go out and order a bunch of minivans. Yeah, we can do that, but then you have to deal with the back orders, right? And I think that's part of our issue too, is we're still dealing with a lot of back ordering of things or backlogs of things that have been ordered. So we're working through that. But additionally, I think it's an opportunity for us to take a deeper look at how we partner with faith-based organizations, some of the advocacy groups. There are a number of entities that can help us. We service a ton, when I say a ton, for the size of this school district, it's a small percentage, but it's a lot. 457 non-public students. And what that means is we have to sometimes cross across district or county lines to go get these students and bring them into our school. The same also pertains to our McKinney-Vento students, 649 of those students that we have to make sure that transportation is provided for. So if we're able to look at some alternative ways of having some relief in those areas, we think that would help increase us being able to get more buses freed up to take on some of the larger routes. I've said this over and over, and I've seen this as I've gone and visited schools. I have to thank our parents and community members, because for the most part, many of you are stepping up and you're helping us. And we know we have a responsibility to deliver on that, and we will, I promise you. But I do want to make sure that I'm saying thank you to everybody that is having to put up with the traffic and some of the things that we're all working through. Some of these things are going to correct itself over time, and some of them, it does require a coordinated effort with us working with government representatives. And I plan to do that and reach out to more of those leaders that are here, not only in the county, but in the state, to kind of help us with some of the congestion. So just know that we're continuously working on those things, and we will continue to do our part. I attended Goshen Farms this past weekend, fall event with Ms. Schauheim, and we had an opportunity to look at the facilities over there and just give me an opportunity to learn more about some of the non-traditional ways that we can provide instruction to our students. Then on that same Saturday, went over and hung out at the Annapolis Festival at the Safeway, had a chance to meet the police chief in Annapolis and a number of other key leaders. And then we continue to work with our bargaining units. I mean, we talked about that earlier today. Collaboration really does matter. And I do want you all to know that there will be an announcement regarding Bright Space on Friday. When I started here, I want to say 4 weeks ago, I told our TAC president, give me 4 weeks to look into it. Let me go out, ask people, see what people are saying about their experience with it. 4 weeks is Friday. It's Friday. And you will get an announcement on Friday around what we're doing with Bright Space that I think in most cases will let you all know, okay, things are going to be different. If you say we don't listen, Friday, let's reassess that in 2 weeks at the next board meeting. And then we are really beginning to focus on deep data dives. That's not out yet, but one of the things we will begin to move towards is deep data dives and how we focus on data as a whole, as an organization, to drive how we move things forward. And that also means being very transparent with you all at board meetings, showing you the disparities. If everybody says, well, we don't really understand what the disparities are, we're going to put it out there, right? And then we need to set realistic goals on how we're going to continue to move this county forward. It's a good county, and I will keep saying this to each and every single one of you. It could be great. It really can. And if we put the right supports and structures in place and just make sure that people feel that they're valued and that they're a part of the process, this announcement coming out on Friday, we did that in collaboration with TAC. That wasn't done where we just said, here's what we're going to do. And we made sure of that. So that's our focus. And we want to collaborate with the community as a whole around how we can address some of these problems. And then finally, I am dead serious about athletics. When I was a high school principal, I used to tell my kids before we did a hall sweep, we're about to do a hall sweep. Because part of the reason is I don't want to catch you. I don't want to have to deal with the paperwork and all of that kind of stuff, and I need you in class. It's the same thing with these athletic events, right? We put a letter out last week letting people know we will not tolerate any nonsense at extracurricular activities in Anne Arundel County. And at the end of the day, we all deserve to be able to go to these events and feel safe and be able to enjoy the extracurricular development of our youth. And if we can't do that because we're worried about somebody fighting or somebody showing a great deal of disrespect, it makes us all go into a shell. That's not healthy. And so I will say it again in this public board meeting. What we put in that letter stands. We will not tolerate adults, students, or anybody disrupting our ability to provide extracurricular services. I don't want to have to ban anybody from any event. So that's why I'm reiterating it again. You go to one of our events, please conduct yourself in a humane manner. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. All right, that brings us to item 5.05, Budget Committee Report. Ms. Schallheim.
Tough act to follow. Seriously, that was a mic drop moment. Thank you, Dr. Vidal. The Budget Committee did meet on Monday, the 19th at noon. We got an update on funding from all of its sources. As we all know, we were waiting last spring on the last bit of ESSER 3 money to be approved. That has since been approved. And then if we think all the way back to CARES, remember that little piece of legislation at the very beginning of the pandemic? Well, all of that must be spent or obligated by September 30th of this year, and September 30th is coming up very soon. So we have in fact spent or have otherwise obligated all those funds, and we will do that on time. And we have a little agenda item coming up later on this evening about board budget priorities. We did talk about those and the methodology used and how all of that was collected by myself. And so we will go over that in great detail soon, later this evening. And that's about it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you again, Ms. Schallheim. Okay, so that brings us to item 6.01, the transportation update. Dr. Bedell.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. At this time, staff will provide the board with an update on a variety of issues related to transportation of students to and from school in the 2022-2023 school year. So we are ready to go through this slide deck with you all on where we are.
Good evening. For the record, Alex Shaknovich. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on item 6.01. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the school district. So how many drivers do we need every day? Sort of like the foundational question, right? We've got about 55 AACPS buses on the road each and every day, and 585 buses are run on a daily basis through our contractors. However, as you can see on the far right, we're about 78 short as of 9/14, September 14th, of drivers in total. Now, the footnote at the bottom is also critically important, right? The goal is we definitely want to be able to not just recover and fulfill those 78 to break even, but on any given day, people get sick, they get COVID, they have other obligations, they leave, right? So we need to create a bench, and really industry says about a 10% bench is what you need to make sure you don't have any coverages, including those, morning oopses. So timeline for a driver coming through the pipeline. It's about 8 weeks in general. 6 weeks of it really is spent with the contractors doing some of those foundational instructional elements, and the state law says that we, the school district, have to provide a portion of that training as well. It's not just like driving the bus, though. So driving a bus is part of that training, but it's everything else that you need to do that COMA requires in dealing with students and children, right? As well as all of the training that we require, all those safe school trainings, everything else that we as a school district require of all of our employees. So that needs to be crammed into that 6 weeks. And then there's an MVA test. You get a learner's permit, you have to do a road test, you have to do a written test, and you finally get your license and you're eligible for driving. So that's about an 8-week process, assuming that everybody passes everything going through the first try. So coming through the pipeline. So it is a very rigorous process. It is a very rigorous process. I will repeat that. Why is that? These folks are driving our most precious cargo, right? They're not driving little brown boxes. They're driving humans. And so on purpose, it is a very rigorous process, rightfully so. But about 50% of the folks that enter into the pipeline on the very first end of it can fail. And they can fail not just because of the rigorous process, but they can fail because of background checks, drug screenings, physical requirements, fingerprinting requirements. So there's a lot of reasons for that. And for those that make it out the other end, and we spoke about this before, given the external pressure, those CDL licenses are kind of the gold card. So a lot of people that walk out the other end of it, unfortunately, do not long-term onboard or stick with the bus contractors. So really about 25% of the front end come through and stick. So our need for drivers, this is about every Wednesday. We sort of take the temperature of the water with how many drivers are required. You'll see on the far left, we ended last year about 48 drivers short. So that's where we were kind of in June as we shuttered our doors for the summer months. And then we kept in contact with everybody over the summer. And you'll see that, we were trending downwards at the beginning of the summer, but now that school started, we're trending back up. So we're sort of swimming in the wrong direction in terms of the total drivers. And this data is as of 14th of September. In terms of drivers in a pipeline, again, you can see that it sort of ebbs and flows. Again, these are Wednesday numbers through September the 14th. We ended at 48 short, hoping to recover against that. We had a number of people in the pipeline, but remember, just because it says at any given moment there's 77 or 59, that's not derated, right? That's not derated for the number of folks that won't make it through the process or come to work with us. So the next slide really overlays that data. So it's one on top of the other, and it sort of shows you the gap between drivers that are needed in total simply to get to that break-even number. That again is not accounting for any surplus for substitute drivers and the drivers in the training pipeline, the green bars below. So we're interested in service disruption. So the next 3 slides are really going to cover that at the high school, middle school, and elementary school level. So the way to decipher this this plot is within each of the feeder zones. If the dot is coded red in this and green, I'm sorry, in this case, they currently have no systemic bus service disruptions, and by that I mean long duration, right? Not the one day somebody's water heater went up. That's not what this is portraying to show. And the yellow dots are high schools that have some level of bus service disruption. So 14 of the 15 high schools, including Mary Wausau, J. Alberts, have some degree of bus disruption. Similarly, with the middle school, there's one additional color code here. So now we've introduced a red dot to show if the school not only has a partial bus service disruption, but it is a Title I school. So 16 of the 20 middle schools, including Phoenix, into that account, have a bus service disruption. And then similarly for the elementary schools, same legend. So green means fully serviced, yellow means partially serviced, red means partially serviced, as well as being Title I. And 36 of the 80 elementary schools, including Phoenix, have a level of bus service disruption. A question was asked about our attendance rate. So this is a sort of pre-pandemic, right? The last kind of almost full school year that we had. This is looking at the first 3 weeks of school in the 1920 academic year and now in the 22-23 academic year. And the far right-hand side shows the difference. Now, it would be a tremendous mistake to make, to sort of attribute causality to this beyond, just buses, right? Because folks are out on any given day for a lot of reasons. And overlaid with some of the still COVID reluctance and some of the other issues and challenges we're still faced with. Certainly buses obviously would potentially contribute to a portion of this. So recruitment efforts are ongoing. They're, really kind of robust and across the board, and I'm just going to focus on just a few of them. We're continuing to work with our partners in county and city government to cross-market our job openings with theirs to look for opportunities where we could co-locate positions and fit in our part-time openings into some of their part-time openings, kind of piggybacking. We are leveraging every one of our available social media and media abilities. We've been hosting job fairs and hiring fairs. In fact, we were just out at the Anne Arundel County fair here. So we're going to job fairs and recruitment fairs anywhere and everywhere. And I'll say that our county workforce development entity, and I'll speak about that a little bit more in a moment, has just been a tremendous ally. And then this is just a picture of ours, but again, driving all around the county, you'll see, physical displays. So buses with banners on them parked at shopping centers or businesses up and down the county. So our partners I mentioned earlier isn't just workforce development. And again, I'll say a little bit more about that in a second, but at the state level, the State Department of Labor, the Governor's Office, and the MBA is working not just with us, but with all of the school districts and really the whole industry to try to increase the number of properly credentialed school bus drivers for all of the state. The Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Corporation, that's really, their sole mission. But they've got a couple unique lenses that we can't see into, right? So they have a lot of inroads with military veterans and military connected families. They are privy to anybody who is on the unemployment rolls and looking for jobs. Any company here that is looking to do a downsize of any significant nature by law has to notify not just the State Department of Labor, and that information goes to workforce development. So people whose jobs are being sunsetted, AWDC knows that, and again is doing an outreach. So they've been a tremendous ally. And then the Anne Arundel Community College also has been a tremendous ally. Recruitment efforts, so free and paid CDL training. I mean, people pay out of pocket, right? They pay a lot of money to do CDL training. We offer it for free. And in most instances, the candidates are actually getting paid while they're going through that course. And I mentioned the community college previously. So the community college has been a partner in this as well. They have courses. The Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Corporation is paying the community college to put on CDL license classes as well. So you can come through the Anne Arundel pathway using us and our contractors, or you can go through the community college pathway. We all know that we gave an outsized COLA this past year to the contracted driving community, 10%, which was more than double what any of our own drivers got, 4%, right? So the contracted drivers got 10%. That's why I'm calling it sort of an outsized COLA. And then once again, for the second year in a row, the county executive had authorized the County Workforce Development Corporation to fund and distribute recruitment and retention bonuses. In fact, the first one of those has already gone out here in September. So other improvements. These are really partnering with county and state agencies. They're doing traffic studies now that we finally have seen real-time data, right? You can only predict or assume so many things going forward. So traffic studies at critical areas are sort of underway that lead to things like adjusting signal timing, improving or altering signage, looking at opportunities where either sidewalks or crosswalks can be improved. So those sort of, I call them infrastructure elements, are being incrementally improved as time marches forward. And part and parcel with that is the school level focus, which is in a way where a lot of times your biggest bang for the buck is occurring, right? Our principals are communicating, with their parents. There's a lot of communication. There's been a lot of tweaking of student drop-offs, right? So just a mechanical process of how we ingress and egress properties are continuously being reevaluated and improved. That feedback loop then goes right back to the communication with parents, right? So we're getting much more efficient. People are becoming much more accustomed, and that's running much more smoothly. And we're also working with school leaders to do bus audits and student counts of buses that are oversubscribed, right? We know how many kids were assigned to that bus, right? If we assign 47 youngsters to that bus and we show up and there's 71, there's a problem, Houston, right? So we are working with the school-based administrators to audit those buses, notify the students, and notify the parents or guardians about of any improprieties. Other improvements, again, I hearken back to our partnerships with the county and the city. We've identified cross-ridership opportunities, information through Mr. Mosier's office, and the city and the county has been put up about that, and they've graciously waived the fees for our students. And importantly, is families and surrounding communities are making adjustments as well. And I reference on our property, but we live in a big ecosystem, right? People have choices about what time they're leaving their house to even go to their own job or to go to appointments or go to their grocery stores. So as our times have shifted, initially, right, the community commuters, whatever, weren't really accustomed to that. But now that they've been stuck in traffic a couple of days in a row, they've now learned to leave 20 minutes earlier, 20 minutes later. That has actually helped relieve a lot of the pressure around our schools. So it's not just our own families and staff that are making on-premises adjustments, but our ecosystem is making adjustments as well. So that kind of hits some of the highlights. And with that, I'm ready to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sheknovich. Ms. Schalheim, I see. Let me say before we start, as usual, first round questions. If you have a comment, wait till the second round to make it. Okay? So Ms. Schalheim.
Thank you for this. I guess my question remains the same as last time. And then the next round, I do have some comments as to why we are paying with taxpayer money for CDLs to have half of those folks or 3/4 of those folks not come and work for us. So I heard your response last time, and I'm sure it's not different this time. But I think we all need to ask ourselves this question. Why are we doing it this way? There's got to be a different way. And I have some comments in the next round. Thank you.
Okay, I think I have the order correct here, but a bunch of lights came on sort of at the same time. So Ms. Corkadell?
Thank you, President Tobin. I have two questions, Alex, more for information. When students transfer here into our school system and we're facing a full bus, how are we addressing that need, or what happens? How do we? It doesn't sound like we have a lot of flexibility. So can you maybe share a little bit about how we handle students that have to transfer from one school to another,
Sure.
or flat out, or just move in
Whether
here?
you come in from another state or whether you come in from just another town, right, as part of that registration process at the new school, one of the many things, including vaccinations and everything, one of the things is a residency check, and a residency check then drives the answer to whether they're transportation eligible or not. If they're identified as being transportation eligible or not, through our school, Power School system or student data system, that then triggers a notification to our transportation department to assign that youngster to the bus. We absolutely have some buses that are oversubscribed. No bus is oversubscribed by design or program. So we did not when we programmed the buses for the school year, program them anywhere near the federal maximum. And in fact, the goal was to not have more than 2 secondary school kids to a seat, and in many cases, they're programmed for less. So there should be capacity on most of those buses. Where there's not capacity, there's probably something else going on. And that harkens back to some of the school bus audit situations. So we're not really finding that we don't have a home for a new youngster. They're entitled to be in school. They're entitled to be on the bus if they're at the appropriate thing, and it's our job to get that kid on the bus.
And the follow-up to this question really quickly is, and so if a family's circumstances has changed and they chose to opt out, Are there opportunities for them to change their status if their life circumstances dictated, whether it's like a health event or, I mean, something serious happens and they can no longer provide that and had told us. How is that being handled?
If there's special ed, then the IEP would drive that. If they're not special ed, then the answer is no. I mean, we were very clear that you had to opt in, and that was going to be essentially an irrevocable decision for this entire year. Now, that does not apply to someone that newly comes into the district or transfers, from one zone to the other. But if you were a rider last year, you willfully and you acknowledge on a piece of paper, I'm opting out. It was very clear that it was for the duration of the entire year. It was irrevocable. We had that discussion here. So if that's something we want to change, then it's going to take a couple of you to help that get changed. But right now, that's the answer.
Okay, so that is actually now regulation, or is that inscribed, or is that?
That is the
something-
direction that was provided to staff, and that is exactly what we're doing.
Okay. And then lastly, messages concerning bus outages for our families who English is the second language. Are they receiving those messages in the appropriate language? Number one, and number two is, do we have a transportation specialist to work with them in their language should they need to reach out? Because one of the barriers from those families can very well be a hesitancy to reach out when it's not their local schools, because they don't know if there's someone who can actually assist them directly and interactively. Could you go over a little bit about that access to our system?
As with most of our messages, they go out in two primary languages, English and Spanish. So the transportation messages really are not any different. Our communications office is continuously working on improving that. At our transportation office, we have a temporary individual, temp worker that is bilingual. We do not have a permanent full-time person. Nobody's job requirements is you must be able to speak two languages to work in that department. So we can't actually make that a requirement. It's certainly a desired characteristics. And if we're interviewing people, boy, you get extra points for that. But we do have a temp employee there in the call center that is fluent in Spanish and can help navigate. We also have good partnerships here with the school district. There are more than a couple ways for us to leverage resources through other offices here in central office. So if we cannot handle that directly at Riva and self-perform, we then partner with some of the resources we have in this building to connect those dots and help navigate those conversations.
Thank you very much. I will have just one comment after we're done with questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, and I want to thank Dr. Bedell, all of your staff, Mr. Cheknovich, for the continued work on the transportation issues, and we know that it will continue, and we do appreciate that. I just want to ask you, because I'm not sure if I heard correctly, when you were talking about going over the slide with the driver training. Did I hear you say that in some cases or in many cases, people are paid while they're taking the course?
Correct. We do for our trainees, and almost all of the contractors do as well.
Okay,
Again,
so it depends on who they're going to work for as to who pays them?
Well, if you work, so there's 15 independent private companies out there. I mean,
Right.
They establish their own rates, but almost all of them do. Today, very few people are just going to voluntarily sit through 8 weeks of training for free, not getting a paycheck. They have bills, right? So we understand that's one of the incentives to have them, come to training, is not charge them, because there are many private companies that you are going to pay handsomely out of your pocket to go through that training. We offer that for free. That's one of the incentives. And then not only us, but almost all of the contractors to some extent also pay them while they're in training out of their pocket. We're not paying for that training. They're paying. for that training out of the pocket, but it's really the only way to get people in the door, because if you sign promissory notes to put liens on their house, or you don't pay them for 8 weeks, or you tell them they're going to go to purgatory if they don't come to work for us afterwards, they're not even going to show up to start with, right? So, I mean, so these are the things that are kind of being done to incentivize them, right? You can see we're short no matter what. So we're trying to put as many carrots out there as possible. And one of the ways is, in fact, to offer that free training and to offer them some monicum of
Okay, so
compensation.
I didn't
while they're
realize
in
that. That's why I asked about it. Because
Yeah.
So when we've talked about it in the past, we talked about paying for their training. So we are paying for the training, whatever costs are associated with that, as well as paying them an income for them.
Right.
And
So, I
there's
mean,
no obligation. So half of them that we pay for 8 weeks of training plus pay for their training, they're walking out.
Well, half of them never make it. So
I
half of
know,
them
I'm not talking about
wash
I'm
out
not-
right away,
I'm,
so they're
I'm
not
talking
getting
about
paid.
out of
Yep.
those who make it.
Yep. And you say we, right? I mean, the contractors are paying, their people, we're paying our people, but it's still, it's still an expense. So.
And do we know, because contractors have their own, make their own decisions about paying their staff, do we know that none of the contractors have any kind of commitment requirement, or?
That's pretty much the standard mode, just not here, but also with other school districts around. That's kind of the normal operating way kind of across the state, or at least the folks that I stay in contact with.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Frank?
Yes, thank you. I just want to sort of confirm or clarify, when students have a late bus and they go in and bus 94 is late, it's here, they go in, they're not listed as tardy for those classes. Is that correct?
Correct. And so the answer to that is yes. And there is a code to track those, but that does not count against her attendance certificate or anything like that. It's our fault, right? Not the kid's fault. So the kids shouldn't pay the price for being tardy because our bus got them there late.
Okay, and you mentioned, this is the second part of my question, you mentioned there's a code to track that. So are we tracking the students who are missing class time because of late buses?
So we're tracking the students that don't attend, not the ones that are tardy, not formally. The school certainly knows, but here at the corporate level, we don't track if you're late by 5 minutes or 10 minutes. The school knows that. We know that the bus was late, but we here aren't tracking all 83,000 kids to see which ones are 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late.
Okay, I was interested in the absentee rates that you had. So I guess I just would want to see something that correlates to how many students are late by more than a 5 minute, or how many buses in the fleet percentage-wise might be late. Do we have any kind of corresponding data to that, or no?
I don't, but I don't tonight.
Okay.
It's something I'll gladly look into. I'll have to get with the school operations folks, right, and work with them to see what's available.
But you are tracking it, so it wouldn't be a difficult number to pull, correct?
So I track buses. I don't
Okay.
track
Well,
kids.
but
Like I
buses would be
track
fine,
buses,
too.
schools track kids. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we need to
So
partner a little bit.
bus-wise, you could give me 5% of the fleet is late 3 days a week or more, or something.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll
somewhat
gladly
simple.
look into that.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dent?
Good afternoon. I have a couple of questions, but I will limit it and try to summarize as much as I can. So we've had this conversation since school ended last year about the bus transportation and about my concerns about buses. So I looked at the bus system, and I have District 1. So we've been talking about this for a while. And my question is that when it comes to deciding what buses and what areas that we were going to put buses in, was equity a consideration?
So the bus routes are bid on by private companies. 15 companies are bidding on those routes. So who prevails, we operate in a public procurement system. So it's really the lowest responsible, bidder. So we don't have control on the front side of who wins routes year in and year out. Now, amongst the prevailing contractors, now they've got their prescribed routes, and inside of their basket, which routes are serviced or run or not run, we do have some influence over that. But if, for example, if, a specific company has that school and they've got a higher prevalence of driver shortages, that's not something that we have the ability to fix, because that company won that route, and I can't have I can't take a driver away from another company and force that driver to go to work, for company B instead of company A. So that's kind of where the hard spot becomes.
I'm sorry, I really did not understand anything you just said, because
Okay.
it sounds like to me that we are hiring contractors who bids on routes, and if they bid on the route and they don't fulfill the route,
Yep.
then we have no control over that.
What we do is, to begin with, they don't get paid for the route. There's liquidated damages, and after a certain period of non-performance, you have to notify them of that. You give them a cure notice. They have a cure period. If they don't cure, you can terminate the contract. If you terminate the contract, then you can reassign it to somebody else. The question becomes, who are you going to reassign it to? Because all the other contractors have driver shortages too. So if you take it away from company A, which we have the prerogative to do, and we do. We did that last year. We're going to be doing that shortly soon, is looking at terminating non-performance contracts. But you have to have a from to chart. If you're taking it from A that's not servicing it, you have to be able to reassign that work to another company after you've gone through the procurement process and you've terminated for cause or convenience. The first one, you can reassign it to another company, but the other company has to have the capacity as well. Otherwise, you've not gained anything.
Okay, so one last question. So if there's a bus route that is vacant or doesn't run, which is in the many cases that are in my area, a bus route hasn't ran particular areas in 4 weeks. We're in the 4th week of school. Is it because the bus routes wasn't bidded on, or was all the routes covered in this bid process?
100% of the routes were bid on, 100% of the routes were awarded. So absent a driver shortage, there should not be any uncovered routes. Every route is awarded, every route's bid, every route is fully funded. The sole reason that it's not being run is because there's not a driver. So there's a bus sitting in a bus lot that's gassed, has 4 tires, it's ready to go. It's missing the human behind the wheel. It's that human that we need. And when that human shows up, then that route essentially turns on, right?
Okay, all right, thank you. Dr. Tobin, I have several questions, so I'll reserve it.
Mr. McGrath.
Good evening, Mr. Shaknovich. I hope you are doing well. I just had a quick question about the 50% who failed the program. You named a couple of reasons why they failed. I was wondering if you had at your disposal the largest reason why they washed out of the program.
Failure to be able to pass the background test, the drug tests, and the physical exam test is probably the number one. And then beyond that, it gets hard. It's like schoolwork, right? You have to, learn a lot of the driving codes, a lot of the traffic codes, a lot of the bus safety mechanics. So there's a lot of book work. If you do fail out because you don't have a good, clean criminal, record or clean drug and alcohol test, whatever, you're just done. But if you are not able to pass like the written part of the test, right, you're just not gone forever. You're not ineligible to try again. So a lot of those folks, we try to come back, reteach them, recover the material, and try to get them in a position that they can pass. That's the goal. So just like in school, if you can do a redo, right? So we try to reteach them and try to keep them so they can do a redo and continue kind of further into that pipeline. sometimes they just get frustrated and even in school, right? Redos are offered on a lot of things, but some of your classmates don't avail themselves of it. Some folks get frustrated and will just walk away and won't participate sort of in that reteach, redo cycle.
Thank you. Mr. Silkworth.
Thank you, President Tobin. So I'm going to piggyback on a couple of my colleagues based upon that 50%. So if we have maybe 60 in the pipeline, that means there are 30 that wash out for the reasons you just explained. And I think it's worth it for us to do whatever we can to help them in that redo process. If we can come up with some strategies to help them, because guess what? If we only get one, that's well worth that process.
Yeah, and that's actually where we put most of our time and effort, because they've already expressed an interest, right? They've already gotten through the background checks. They gotten through a lot of the initial washout piece. Once they're in the course and they're having trouble with the book work, or maybe their test taking skills aren't maybe what they need. That's where we really invest most of our time, because they are our most viable candidates, right? That's really where we got to spend that time to see if they're salvageable, and if we can get them to, course correct and get them to in a position where they can be successful. That's our main goal.
Excellent. Well, little Robbie Silkworth may not get it the first time, the second time, but I'm persistent. And if I have help and mentors, I'm going to get there. So Thank you. The other thing is.
And the same thing's true with MVA too, by the way. If you fail an MVA test,
Yes.
There's a window. You can't just come back tomorrow morning. But
Correct.
yes, even at their stage, you can repeat, you can repeat things at the MVA just like you can repeat things with us.
Right. Thank you. Again, to piggyback off of one of my colleagues, one district has 10 or 12 buses out. Another district has 0 to 1. So I understand the issue with the contracts. But within a contract for a bus company, is it not possible to share the pain so that some bus drivers within that contract that are serving one school could then help with the school that's been out, so that we share the pain?
Yeah. So 2 answers to that. One, we took a lot of purposeful strategy and assignment. We had buses that were out 60, 130 days last year.
Right.
That bus that was out 80 days last year is not the one that's out 80 days this year. In a way, it's somebody else's turn. And the board wanted that to happen. The superintendent wanted that to happen. So 2 answers to that. One is we tried the ones that suffered the most last year. We're trying our best to not have them to be in that position this year. That's one. The second thing is, we can't move buses around every day, every week, right? So, you got to take a look at either at like a quarter or a semester. So you got to take a look at a key sort of transitional point that you're going to say, okay, from this date on, we're going to turn B off and C is going to turn on. So those are the 2 things that we are looking at and working on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Before we turn to comments, I have a couple of questions myself. One of your slides, you reference bus audits and student counts. Are those sheets now available at all schools regarding who's on the bus?
Even better, it's in Power School, and the school secretary, school admin can all, it's our IDD office actually sent out like a cheat sheet that said, because some people are really good at Power School. So IDD sort of sent out a cheat sheet that said, do these things, and it pops out for you. And so every school can self-perform that on their end.
Okay, so the buildings have what they need to determine who should be on the bus and who should not, right?
Right. Okay. And they know, again, they know their children. Every admin, we got great boots on the ground, APs and principals. They know their youngsters. They can stand at the foot of that bus, and child A comes off, they're looking at the Power School list. Child A is okay, they continue on to the building. Child B, come here, stand behind me for a second, don't go anywhere. And then they start by having a conversation with the child first,
Mhm.
the student first, maybe a second conversation with the student. After that, just like with everything else, right? Now the next call comes home. So our admin teams know how to deal
Mhm.
with essentially a violation of anything. This is a bus ridership thing. It will be no different if it was a discipline issue or something else. It's that same practice that that school building leader uses,
Mhm.
and the Power School student data system gives them the tool that they need to be able to do that.
And am I correct? This is the first year we've had that, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And that came from the registration,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay. Another question I had, thank you for the maps, kind of giving us a sense of where the difficulties are. I'm curious, Dr. Bedell earlier referred to, new and additional resources that are coming in and we hope will continue to come in like vans and other things. And I don't know if this is a question for you, Mr. Sheknovich, or you, Dr. Bedell, but can you say something about how we're going to prioritize those new resources as they come in?
Yeah, it's pretty simple because so let's just stick with, we'll call them vans, right? For colloquialism, they are a great resource for our non-public students. They're a great resource for our McKinney-Vento homeless students, and they are a great resource for some of our special ed students to go to, some special ed placements, right? If it's an appropriate vehicle type for them. So that is one of our rules. Remember, it was illegal. We couldn't even think about that before. But you have an entire bus behind you with a driver and an aide and one or two students that are driving up to Reisterstown or Dundalk or Frederick, Maryland, each and every day. So the quicker that we can sort of flip resources and get that student, if it's appropriate, into a smaller vehicle, that then frees up not just the bus. I've got plenty of those. It frees up that driver because you don't need a CDL to drive a lighter class vehicle, right? It frees up that driver for redeployment then to a large route. So that's a critical piece of the pie.
So I'm also asking then about that step, right? Once you've freed up that CDL driver, how do you prioritize which routes get covered?
Yep. So very simple, but very complicated, right? So it's within that bus company's roster. Right? So that bus company has 77 routes, but they only have 59 drivers.
Right.
So there's a gap of 18 routes that are 19 routes that aren't covered, right? So we take a look at that. We take a look at the ones that, again, have seen the greatest amount of harm per se, right? We take a look at the status of, Title I. We take a look at the status of, if you put that driver on Route A, they pick up 13 kids. If you put that driver on Route B, they'll pick up 47 kids. So there's a lot of factors to go into that. But the key is getting that driver available. Then you take a look at which routes within that contractor's portfolio are not covered. And then we work with that contractor to basically sort of maximize or best use where that asset can be relocated. And the asset is the driver.
Okay, thank you. I think we're on to comments now. So Ms. Schalheim.
Yes, thanks. So it's going to be comments / questions because things have come up obviously in the course of this. So we were you were mentioning that one of the criteria that you're prioritizing over last year is bus routes that didn't have service last year. But that hasn't been universally adhered to because we also have to think about our children that are in part of Title I schools and the like. So can you be a little bit more specific as to how you're figuring all that out?
No, because it's not a single factor, right? I mean, again, there's a lot of factors, and it is overly simplistic to say only one of these variables is what we're going to be looking at.
Okay.
But again, rate of non-coverage is a big one, right? I mean, we're trying, Mr. Silkworth, this board has repeatedly said, for lack of a better word, try to share and spread the pain, right? But don't lose sight of the other things. Don't lose sight about special ed and Title I and a lot of other things. So we're trying to take into consideration all of the factors that not just the superintendent and the board, but our public are kind of looking at us to take into account as well.
Right.
So
I mean,
it's not formulaic driven, Ms. Schulheim. It's just not that simple because again, the contractor A only is short one driver. That's a no-brainer. They find a new driver, you're just done. Contractor B's got 19 drivers short. They have one new driver. Now it's where to put that one driver in 19 different gaps, right? Where's the best place for that? It takes a lot to figure that out.
Yeah, I know. I just want to acknowledge the fact that, I mean, some of our communities in each of our districts ended the school year with no service and begun the school year with no service, still have no service. Windsor Farm Elementary is a great example of that.
We did a lot. I mean, a lot of Windsor Farm is missing a lot of buses. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But the contractor that covers that school also has, for example, a lot of Title I route schools. So I'm not at the moment, although at the quarter, we could certainly look at that, right? A lot of our buses have been migrating towards more of our Title I, covering our special ed gaps, right? They have an IEP that has to be serviced. So there is, a little bit of a hierarchy in terms of what we're trying to accomplish overall.
And I completely understand and I honor that. I just want to recognize that there's, everyone's situation is important and deserves that consideration. I have to say it's hard for me to sit here and keep my stuff together when tonight when we talk about not just paid training, but or not just paid for training, but paid while training, and then watching folks leave. I'm just going to leave that out there. I'm seeing red and having trouble focusing my breathing a little bit. We need to find a different way, a better way. And no one's talking about putting liens on houses, just so we're clear. I just think we need to think outside the box, as Dr. Bedell has said repeatedly on that. And we also need to look, we also need to, going back to the algorithm, we have to look at this through an equity lens like we do everything else, seeing the concentration of red dots on the map and where the yellow and some of the green dots are makes me sad. And so we need to focus on that. And then one way maybe we can think outside the box is just like how our colleague, Mr. Silkworth, got a call asking him to step back into the classroom. Maybe we can pull up our list of retired bus drivers and call them up. Maybe they want to pitch it for a while, a few months, maybe a couple of them can share a route, and between a couple retired bus drivers, we get a route covered, or however folks want to do it. I just thinking about
actually the state's been a great ally for all 24 of us. They actually have a list of people that have the right credentials and all. The state has actually been sending out things to license holders using the MVA database to try to incentivize or entice them to, whether you're retired or active, the state's been trying to send some stuff out to get them to consider school bus.
Oh, for sure.
Services, so.
I've heard that before, and I'm happy to hear that. I think we as a school system can call up our old people who have retired as bus drivers, get our contractors to call up their old employees who have retired and see if they want to come back out and help out. I mean, that we all have to be part of that solution. So I just an idea there.
Yeah.
And that's really all I have. I don't think this is gonna, just to piggyback off what some folks in the audience said tonight, and what I think all been saying in different ways over months and years. Like, we can't expect, we can recruit all we want, but only a living wage is going to retain folks. And so we really have to make sure people are getting paid a living wage to do what they do, carrying our most precious cargo to and from school every day. So I think, as we look into the future and look at our contracts going forward, that has to be top of mind, because without a living wage, we can recruit and recruit and recruit, but then we can't retain.
Well, let me take the other half of your equation. We have to retain the ones we have. And I'm just going to piggyback off the superintendent's comments about athletics. I have less drivers today than I did 3 weeks ago. You know why? Because people misbehaved.
Yeah.
Right? I've had bus drivers beat up. I've had them threatened. I've had buses vandalized. Right? People are going to decide not to want to do this. And some of the videos have been horrific. And not just as that one bus driver that got assaulted leave, but guess what? There's a couple other people at that bus lot like, well, Billy got beat up. I don't want that to happen to me. I lose not just one, I lose a couple. So please listen to your superintendent. It's not just at the athletic events. You cannot do that on a bus. You cannot do that at a bus stop. We can't have fights. We can't be calling police. And the police don't have the time and the resources to be showing up at bus lots to break up fights and protect drivers from being assaulted and accosted. We're swimming in the wrong direction. So I 100% agree with you that on the recruitment side, we've got to address compensation and some of those things, but we also have to address civility, decorum, and conduct, not only on the bus, but also at the bus stops. And then just the way that folks are calling and emailing and social mediaing people into just wanting to walk away. And I literally have that happening every day. I shared with you at the last meeting a statistic. In a 2-week period, I had 11 drivers quit. I had just had 3 drivers hired. I'm swimming in the wrong direction. And that happened last week. And I promise you this week, the numbers today, I'm 79 down. I had 1 more quit just in the last couple of days. So we've got to retain who we have. Please be civil, be respectful, and we'll work on the other half of the equation as well.
I completely agree. It's not, our kids are wonderful. It's some of the parents. You cannot board a bus for any reason ever. Do not yell at our bus drivers. Do not attack them on social media. Do not say horrible things about them because they will walk away. I stand at my daughter's bus stop every day, and the first thing that that bus driver sees when he opens the door is me smiling, waving, and saying thank you. We all have to be respectful and act like adults, please, because it's not our kids who are doing this. It's some of the parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Again, I'm hopeful I get this order correct. Ms. Dent.
My follow-on question is very simple. So I don't want to belabor the idea. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Regardless of who you hire, the respect is there, and people are going to go and come all year long. So that's never going to be my concern. But I do think that some emphasis has to be put on equity. So at some point, I would like to, as always, come and have a better understanding before I make comments about the process that we are using for procurement. But I also know that there is some space in there for us to redirect some of the routes that have been allocated out to contractors that can't fulfill those routes. And so I don't know if that timeline or what that timeline is, but I can tell you that 4 weeks into school, if you haven't performed yet, 4 more weeks is not okay. 80 days of missing school, that's a lot. I hear you that you are doing everything you can to be as equitable as you can with whoever missed last year, missed this year. My position is no one should miss any year. And we have to figure out how we are going to do that and move forward. So I know that you are working on it, Dr. Bedell. I hear you loud and clear. I appreciate all the work that you and Ms. Ellis and everyone else is doing on it, as well as you, Mr. Shaknovich. The solution is not going to be thought out tonight. But I do believe that there is a solution to this. I just do not believe that this can keep on, or that we have to keep on enduring this. I firmly believe that actions have consequences, and I think the faster we invoke those consequences, we'll get some results. And I don't believe that there is, I still say this, I don't believe that there is a bus driver shortage. I don't believe that. And there is a shortage of people willing to pay bus drivers and hold people accountable for the actions that they do to our bus drivers. And then we won't continue to have this. But until we put some stringent rules in place, we're going to continue to fight this battle, as everyone say, the before COVID and the after COVID. But that's not a solution for me. And I'm not just saying it to you. I'm saying that's not the solution. And it can't just be okay any longer. It's not for me. I have over 300 emails. I have over 300 emails about transportation since the first of school. And I know you have probably 5 times that many. But transportation cannot occupy our board meetings every single year for the duration of the board. It just doesn't make sense. So I ask that all of us come together and come up with a solution as soon as possible. And if that means finding other contractors, then we have to do that too. But this is not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you. Thank you. So I do appreciate answering the questions about the about our opt-out, and I am aware of what we passed, but I'm just going to suggest that just about every single regulation in this school system has a hardship clause, whereby which the superintendent and or his designees can review a case by case to determine if there is a need and some flexibility. I'm not aware that we promulgated that decision in policy. In fact, I know we didn't in policy, or that it was in any regulations. And so I would just like to suggest to my colleagues that maybe, as we approach into midstream and a little more settling, that we consider what the implications of having an absolute no opportunity for hardship to occur. Because ultimately, we're here to make sure these kids get to school and so that they can be educated. And I honestly thought when we passed that, just like everything else that we pass, that there is kind of an out clause for those exceptions. And I would hate to see a child who's already experiencing significant family crises and traumatization to then have to come to a realization that they're not able to access school. Nor do I want a situation where a parent is now considered, from the state perspective, negligent in their duties in order, which requires them to ensure that those kids are there when they have absolute no means of doing so, whether it be temporarily or otherwise. So I would just ask my colleagues to consider these things, and our superintendent and staff, and to see if we can come up with something that is reasonable, rational, that's not significantly impact. I don't think we'd have too many out there, quite honestly, but I would like to have something in place so that we can. Second to that, I know we did not talk about any, we focused predominantly on recruitment, retention, and stabilization of existing routes. But I just want to make it clear to my public and to my colleagues that as we work through the upcoming weeks and months ahead, that we continue to work collaboratively together, and our superintendent and Dr. Tobin and others of colleagues have been very, very team-oriented and solution-driven to come up with solutions to the impact of start times. Our southern cluster is the most impacted by these start time changes as it relates to kids actually having benefit to it and the outcomes and implications and impact it has had on the elementary students regarding civil twilight, the duration of routes. These are things that not only am I painfully aware of, but also our staff and our superintendent are working with me. So I just want folks to know that just because we're not talking about North County's challenges, I'm sure there's more crossing guards involving that than there is down in my South County. Mine probably involves shoulders instead of sidewalks, right? Shouldering and such. But these are challenges we are going to have to work on together. And I do look forward to the thinking outside of the box. And I hope that although we have stabilization issues, we are not tabling these students' education and co-curricular and extracurricular and internship opportunities and career opportunities. In other words, wait until we stabilize. We still landed with 48 drivers short. And I think our intent of our motion to make sure that all of our high school students receive those benefits needs to stay in the forefront as a priority. That should about do it. Just many thank you. And we're going to continue to work hard and collaborate together. And I remain available to help facilitate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. I have one more question real quick and then a couple things to say, but how quickly could we reasonably have, knowing that we have GPS on the buses now, a tracking app that parents can access?
Well, the physical GPS devices, you understand, were put in originally for the bus stop arm violation.
Right.
So they should be activated in October. October 1 is the goal. At least that's the county police department's goal. Once that happens, it's going to take a period to make sure that things work, right? That the GPS is working, that they're calibrated, that everything is hunky-dory. And then from that, we can build out other options. One of the options are that. Another option is that is also available that would help the ridership thing is, having chip-enabled student cards, right?
Yeah.
And if the student belongs on a bus, a little green light goes on the driver's dashboard. If it's red with a big X, we have a problem. So the sort of putting in that initial technology, right, is going to open up the door to a couple other options, but we need to make sure that this works first, right? That the bus patrol and the stop arm cameras and the GPS and technology all works. And then as soon as we're comfortable that that is essentially under a belt and working, we're going to start working on additional layers into it. So I don't have a timeline. I can't say it's going to be 7.3 more weeks, but that's where we're heading with this thing.
Okay.
But I got to make sure to what we've done, because if the foundation doesn't work, all of our other options aren't going anywhere, right?
Sure.
So that's kind of the goal, right? The focus right now is to make sure that we have that technology working and we can count on it. And once it works and we can count on it, then we can start layering on some of the other features that we can get out of it.
What about the budget side of it? So if,
Right.
mean, you just mentioned weeks as opposed to next year.
Yeah,
So
well, there's TBD, right? So some of the options some of the options are really low cost.
okay.
Some of the options also transfer cost to the user, right? The user pays
Oh.
a subscription fee or something. I don't think
No.
we kind of want to do that, right? So we do want to take a look at the couple options that we have, figure out the costs, and figure out, okay, least cost, can we absorb it? And what do you get for that? Or do you want to go for a higher cost that has more sort of features and functionality, but that may push us into like a budgetary ask. So that's kind of like that next piece of the work.
Okay. Thank you.
And my two examples I told you, right? Just the app, that's sort of kind of low technology, right? I mean, if you really want to do it right, you really want to have a sensor on that bus. You want to have, a badge that works. There's so many other benefits. And it's not just like who's on the bus, right? I mean, heavens forbid if there's an accident on a bus or anything,
Right.
we would instantaneously know whose families we have to contact. We could notify the police or the fire department of who was on that bus. So,
Right.
but
Or if
some
there's
of
a
those
missing
better
student.
some of those better features come at a higher cost, and that's
Yeah.
what I think we need a way to look at the budget, talk to you folks, talk to the superintendent, and see what do we want in exchange for how much it's going to cost and what the sort of the deployment cycle is for that.
Right. So there's a significant safety gain by having that type of
Yes,
a
definitely.
system. If a student was missing, we'd know if they made it on the bus and that kind of thing.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. I didn't ask questions around it, but my colleagues did. I, of course, very much share the concerns that we're hearing about as far as the equity in who's has access to a bus and who doesn't. But Dr. Bedell, you did mention in your report that is being looked at and being addressed, and I trust that. But it is an issue that I believe is very important to this board. Dr. Bedell also mentioned a meeting that we had last week, and being the board sort of liaison to the change in school hours, I was able to attend the meeting with Dr. Bedell, Ms. Whitehead from Transportation and some other transportation staff, and Dr. Prieto from Prismatic. And I just, first of all, greatly appreciate that meeting. First, collaboration. We're not here to direct the operations of the school system. That's not what we're here for. But we are here to roll up our sleeves and help in any way we can. We're also here to make sure that we fully understand everything that's going on, because we can't serve our community without fully understanding. So I just so greatly appreciate the collaboration that we're experiencing right now. And I want to let everyone know that, I'll just give a couple quick highlights, but first and foremost, what was stressed throughout this meeting was we didn't just put out bus routes in August and say, this is what it's going to be for the year. The work of routing is an ongoing process, and that was very much driven home by both the Director of Transportation and Prismatic, who helped develop these routes. It was never intended to hand it over and say, okay, this is what you got. The work absolutely continues, so please all know that. Transportation is fully aware of where the problem, the concerns are in routing, not just outside of a bus driver shortage. We do have stops that need to be given attention to, as far as how long the bus ride is or how early the pickup is. So those refinements continue, and it's important to get that message out there. I want to speak to the real quickly the opt-in system that was developed last year for this year. This board did not pass any sort of action for that to take place. This board passed a motion many months ago asking the superintendent to bring us a plan to see what that would look like. But what happened was the superintendent brought us a plan and said, this is what we're going to do. So I wasn't against an opt-in. I'm speaking for myself now as a board member, of having an opt-in system, but I just want to make it clear, because Ms. Corkadell, you talked about we passed, but we did not pass a motion to implement this opt-in system. Superintendent made a decision operationally that that's what he thought should occur. There were, I'm just going over a little history right now, but there were a lot of concerns expressed about the lack of flexibility. I had even presented some ideas about what if a student who opts out of a bus, which is going to be helpful to the entire school system, perhaps has a few vouchers that they can use throughout the year if for some reason they absolutely need a bus today. This, because the way that system was supposed to be designed, was a little bit of room and flexibility for that. So I can tell you it was never this board member's intention for there to be absolutely zero flexibility. But I also firmly believe that Ms. Corkadell, if a real hardship happened and a parent went to their principal, that there would not be a way to work something out. So I would work up through the channels if I were that parent to get the support they need. But anyway, that just we always have to remain human and compassionate. But the way that plan was presented is the reason that what was the percent that we had opt out? It was
About 3%.
Yeah. And our consultant, who's had a history in implementing these scenarios, expected at least, I think, like 10%. So it wasn't. I think it could be implemented better for the future. I guess that's what I want to say about that. But anyway, again, thank you, Dr. Bedell, for the collaboration. I think we are headed in a really good direction. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. I just actually had a couple follow-up questions as I'm hearing other questions. So first, thank you for the update in general, because the data points were really helpful. And I'm assuming that we're going to see something like this again. And so that was kind of my question as to more data. Like, I would love to get, an update a little bit further down the road with just some extra pieces. And to that, I would also like to include, if we're looking at late buses, the CAT buses and the Magna buses. Are there students who are late and then subsequently miss those buses? I would be interested in that detail as well. And then another question is, if we're going through the community and I have neighbors who are bus drivers and I was telling them they were retired bus drivers, we could really use them right now. She said to me her CDL expired. And I didn't know, is there a way to fast track somebody through a process if their CDL expired to get them back into a driver? Now, she actually is disabled, but she has all of her other friends who were retired bus drivers who she said, I might be interested in that. So if there's a pathway there, I would definitely be interested in that. Yes, no.
You know who controls that? That's the MVA. So to reactivate, so for us, they would absolutely have to go back through the background checks. They would have to have a new drug test. They would have to have a new physical test. I mean, there's some things that are kind of non-negotiable in terms of what the MVA needs to see. On our end, we got to comply with COMAR, but I think we could skinny down some of that training on our side. But the real lift is the state going to make them go through everything like as if they're a rookie again, or is there a better way from MVA? And I don't know what their outlook would be on that.
Okay, we have some seasoned ladies who could be interested, just so people know. Maybe we can ask our
We may need to
friends.
speak to some of our state electeds.
Exactly.
Well, and so this board knows, like the MVA's already made some concessions, right? Like the under the hood, like they've slimmed down like some of their testing and training requirements already. They've shown some flexibility. The question is, would they have another, right, more flexibility in regard to your specific question? Like, can they create a new lane for a
Yes,
former
exactly.
holder to just get renewed instead of going all the way back like they've never driven anything in their life before? So it's a very great question. And I don't know if somebody knows somebody at the state.
Sort of
Some
question,
poll.
comment for conversation. And then just one comment is, I know we're in comment period and I'm supposed to limit it to comments. I just want to let you know that in my community, they had, for the first time this week, a bus. And I have a particular parent who has a student in my neighborhood in elementary, middle, and high, and she was literally driving 6 times a day to get all of her kids to and from school. So when her bus driver pulled up one Monday, she brought her flowers and said, please stay. So there are some good stories there too. So I do appreciate you pointing out, some of the concerns that folks have when they're driving. And I would just hope that everybody gets through the next couple of weeks with some grace and patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. So I don't have any questions. I have a few comments. Any school system, the most important thing that the school system has, the greatness within us, it's our students, our teachers, and of course, our communities. We're in the midst of some issues that really involve human capital problems. We need teachers, we need cafeteria workers, we need custodians, we need bus drivers. So these are our needs. The solution will ultimately come from Anne Arundel County communities. Anne Arundel County is the 3rd richest county in the state of Maryland. And I think I've lived here my entire life. We've always worked very hard to provide our students with what they need. I don't know that we've always provided the resources. What I do know is the human capital is here. And as one of my colleagues talked about, a living wage is clearly important. The word collaboration has been used so many times this evening by so many people. That will be a critical component for the solution to this problem. What I know is that Dr. Bedell and my colleagues on this board are committed to the solution to this problem. But ladies and gentlemen, we cannot do it alone. We need your help. So how can you help? Well, if you can volunteer, please do so for our students. If you or someone you know can consider becoming a bus driver, teacher, cafeteria worker, custodian, please step up to the plate for our kids. We need the collaborative effort. What I do know is our teachers and our staff, they continue to make sacrifices each and every day for our kids. It's at the point where we all have to make some sacrifices for our kids. And one final comment. I hope everybody, all of our listeners out there, heard loudly and clearly what Mr. Zaknovich said about some of the misbehavior that has driven some of our bus drivers away. Let's be clear. There's only a few. And we have 85,000 kids. There's only a few that might have done that. But we cannot tolerate that. Conduct must always be positive. Dr. Bedell's message that he sent out recently about the games was spot on. And I know also that our students will rise to the level of our expectation. They will absolutely rise. I hope and expect that we will continue to remind our students to be respectful and to continue to rise to the level of expectation that we all have in the classroom, in the hallways, in the communities, and on the school buses. By the way, Friday evening is homecoming for North County High School. Thank you. I had to get that commercial in there.
But the big homecoming is September 30th at Annapolis High, so. Welcome to Anne Arundel County, Dr. Bedell. So thank you very much for this update. Mr. Cheknovich. It really is tremendously helpful, and I concur with my colleagues. I hope we'll continue to have these updates at a regular interim. I think it's very helpful for us to see where we are, where we need to put the pieces together. And I believe, you know, the old saying goes, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? This is a big elephant. We got to take one bite at a time and work through it. I think we will. I concur also with Ms. Dent's comments. I think we have to get to the root cause of the problem and deal with it. And that may mean conversations as necessary with our various partners. And I would add to this, on my part personally, I am committed, and I say this to you, Dr. Bedell, and all the staff, I am committed to doing anything you need me to do in terms of reaching out if there's assistance needed from our fellow electeds at the state or otherwise with regard to stoplights and any other changes that need to be made. That is, yeah, that is the value of an elected board. And that's part of our job. And so anything we can do, I'm sure, I think I speak for my colleagues, we will do. So please, thank you. Continue to let us know. And again, I was pleased to be part of that meeting that Ms. Ellis referred to. I'm tremendously grateful to the Transportation Department for the work they're doing. It's not easy, and they are working extremely hard. And thank you to you, Mr. Cheknovich, and all the staff for the continuing work on this. This is a huge mountain to climb. So I believe that's everyone. So thank you. All right, that moves us on to item 6.02, FY Board Budget Priorities. Ms. Schallheim.
Thank you. So this is our first conversation publicly to talk about board budget priorities for FY23. And when I say publicly, I mean we did have a brief conversation about it in budget committee, which is also a public meeting. It's rare that the public attends that virtually. So I asked all, just like last year, I asked all members to write to me as budget committee chair and express their top 3 to 5 budget priorities. All members responded, and I thank everyone for doing that. Some also responded with more than 5, but to be fair, we cut it off at 5. I asked for 3 to 5, we cut it off at 5. The extra were put down at the bottom under other ideas. We'll get to that in a second. And what we have before you is sort of the first cut of this. This is not the final list of priorities we might offer by consensus or vote at the next meeting to Dr. Bedell for his consideration. This is just a first crack and a discussion on it. So just to walk you through this document a little bit, each member presented their top 3 to 5. I took out the names because that's not important at this point, and then proceeded to assign a value to each of the items that were written to me, making just a few little assumptions. I assumed that people sent them in their order of preference, and so I listed them out as such. I changed no words or phrasing except where during budget committee it was expressed to me that prevailing wage only applies to construction and a couple other job categories, and it's living wage, not prevailing wage. And then case managers, well, that's not really a job title we have in our system. It's really IEP facilitators and IEP clerks. And so I made those just very few changes. And so for someone's first choice, that got a value of 5 points. A second choice got a value of, or a second priority got a value of 4. third choice got 3 points, and so on. The only other liberty I took is, we had, I didn't ask for any sort of barn doors around what people submitted to me. I just said 3 to 5 budget priorities. And so people had different flavors, especially regarding transportation, from vehicles to pay to both, whatever. I assumed that, it would be okay to bring those all together, call it transportation solutions, and do the math accordingly. The other thing I should mention is I didn't really ask for folks to separate between superintendent's recommended operating budget versus capital budget versus board office budget, which is under the board's purview. I asked for budget priorities, and those were sent to me. And so in our conversation, it won't just be about what we present to Dr. Bedell for his consideration for the upcoming FY24 operating budget, superintendent's recommended operating budget, but also what we as a board might want to see in our own budget for our board office. And so there were a couple members that sent me some capital related items, but because neither one of them related to the state's component, I just asked those folks to table that stuff, get it costed, work with budget office. That will come back before us in February, and a hopefully very short list of amendments that we might present to the operating budget, i.e. not 80.
Yeah.
I like to sleep, and I don't want to get out at 3 a.m. Please. Thank you. So anyway, this is what we came up with for the moment. I'm not kidding, Dr.
Yeah.
Bedell. The first year it was crazy. Not since I was in my 20s, or find myself willingly on the road at 3 a.m. Anyway, so that's why we're doing it this way. This is in the spirit of collaboration to all get on the same page, so we don't have to amend the budget as much as we've had to in the past. All right, so here are the top 5 as dictated by simple math. Transportation solutions, which may include pay, additional vans, additional other vehicles, etc. 2 was living wage for all staff and/or increases for food and nutrition services, TAs, TSAs, and the like. 3 was additional IEP facilitators and IEP clerks and/or full-time equivalents for special or full-time equivalent special educators. And this stems from, a workload issue. They have to teach, they have to do all their other parts of their job related to fulfilling IEP requirements and the paperwork around it. So that's where that came from. Tied with that was early childhood literacy and a focus on letters training. I think we all have an interest in that based on last year. And then one for the board to decide on separately as part of our board office budget to float into the budget as a whole as a possible ombudsman for the board. So that's where we're at. We can scroll down so folks can see. This is just my cool color coding so I can do the math, but, I'm not a graphic artist. What can I say? And if you scroll down even further, then there's a whole button. This was on board docs, y'all. So people can look on board docs, aacps.org/board, scroll down, look at items related to our meetings. It's all there, just like it is here. Excuse any typos, that was my fault. And then here are some of the other ideas submitted that were beyond the 3 to 5. So I'm going to stop talking and invite discussion.
Ms. Ellis? Is that an old light? Okay. Mr. Silkworth? Okay. Ms. Corkadell?
Yeah. And I'll just, I did share this a little bit in budget committee, so no surprise to my colleagues. But I was one of the people that just said the basic category. And so, and the rationale I just want to share with my colleagues was because I honestly think that at this phase, the category of priority is very beneficial to our superintendent. But I hesitate to go, I looked at my colleagues' stuff and a lot of it, like most of it, I feel totally energized about supporting, but those are more looking like amendments. And so I was just wondering if we as a group wanted to talk about maybe consolidating. Last year we had budget categories and different things. Now that we know where everybody's at, I'm wondering if we could work together so that when we finalize at our next meeting, maybe have something that's a little more category driven with flexibility to support the superintendent's recommendations, as opposed to driving it. And that is just a thought to throw out there. I'm comfortable either way, but I thought that what we did last year was effective, and just wanted to throw that out there, that our amendments are often fleshed out through staff and other different comports. And then secondly, I would suggest for the purposes of the superintendent that we separate out as Ms. Schulheim had pointed out, the things that are actually under our control, like the ombudsman, because clearly that came in as amendment due to its nature and timing, and issue that to the person who, similar to our superintendent, establishes that budget, which would be, Ms. Howell and some of the others, our auditor and some of the others. But just a couple suggestions to throw out there to my colleagues. As I said, I'm completely flexible. And then lastly, I want to do an extra thank you to Ms. Schulheim, because I'll tell you, the work that needs to be put into this is extensive, and her work's just getting started for budget as it relates to the amendments and to how we navigate and ensure that the staff has proper coordination. So when we get up here, we're not in the year one that we were in, and we are in a better place, and we improve on it every year with her guidance. So thank you very much for that. And I don't have questions.
All right. So now, did you put a light on, Ms. Ellis? Okay.
Thank you.
Are you trying to
I'm messing with you.
freak out the chair?
So I don't remember the specifics of how we proceeded with this last year. I know last year was our first go around with this, but I do know the purpose here, because it took us a couple years to even get something like this going, was to give the superintendent an opportunity to build a budget knowing what the board's priorities are, instead of having the superintendent develop a budget that the board then amends. I mean, yeah, are amendments inevitable? I mean, I'd love to say we won't have any.
Wouldn't that
But
be great?
what's that?
I said, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, it would be great. I would love for that to be the case. I know it's highly unlikely, but we should at least minimize that as much as possible. And again, this is another way of collaborating with our superintendent. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because I do think it is our duty, if we want to see this through correctly, to actually establish some priorities, to let the superintendent know these are our priorities. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Ms. Schulheim.
So just to jog folks' memories, and thank you, you've read my mind. I pulled up an older version, so not the final. You were just all forwarded, or think so, last year's budget priorities. And so were they specific? Were they general? I mean, it's up to your point of view, I guess. So last year we asked for, the number one was more mental health staff. Number 2 was teachers to reduce class size, and number 3 was activity buses for all middle and high school. Yeah. How unfortunate that still probably is very unlikely given current circumstances. And then we had a whole bunch of other stuff, including other additions and other, and some cuts even for superintendent to consider. And so the final look of this document could be sort of the same way as we did it last year, where we have the top 3 to 5, and then we have the running list of other things that every member submitted just for his consideration, all of which, as I recall, made the amendment process last year pretty smooth. I think there were several, but it was not an all-nighter like the first couple
We had
of
11,
years.
I believe.
11, which is so nice.
We got through it in a
Let's
very
get it.
reasonable
Let's get
time.
it under 10, under 5.
Yeah.
Because it's easier for the staff if we have our stuff together. So I just want to remind folks of that. So I remain open to however the final flow of this is up to us, the board. And like I said, these aren't my priorities are certainly included on this list. As are all other members, I won't be specific as to what mine are or not. That's not important at this point. But how this looks and feels on the final cut is completely up to us, the body. And so, yeah.
Great, thank you. Dr. Bedell, did you want to offer a comment?
Yes, my only suggestion to minimize the amount of amendments is simple. What are we going after? It can't be random, right? So to me, it needs to connect to policy. It needs to connect to a strategic plan, tenets of the strategic plan, and whatever we go after, there needs to be some kind of measurable outcomes for us making that request that we can come back and be held accountable to the community for at the end of the year. So it really goes back to that strategic plan piece. I mean, if it's not a part of that direction within the strategic plan, I could tell you all it will be hard on me to agree. And then we will have a whole bunch of amendments that we'll have to make. And I think it will create a lot of us being distorted rather than us being more aligned. So that would be my only suggestion that I offer as we think about the recommendations.
Yeah, I think that your point, Dr. Bedell, is well taken. And I think it is where we're heading. And as has been alluded to by others, we've come a long way. But I think that is the critical piece, that we are coherent. I've always said a budget is a statement of values, right? And so it needs to state clearly what our values are as a system and what our goals are. And so I think that is where we need to head. And I think this process is helping us do that. I would like to add, as others have, my thanks to Ms. Schalheim. She's shepherded this process now for several years. And the fact that we are where we are is a tribute to her work. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the conversation around this. We will continue and we will revisit these in the next meeting, correct? We will make a decision at that time.
Yeah, this will remain up on board docs as everything is live for the public to digest. Of course, if the public has any concerns or questions, I invite them, as we all do at any point in time, to reach out to myself or any one of us or all of us as desired. And I think we all should sleep on this and gnaw on it a little bit, and then it'll come back next meeting and we can decide how and where we want to go. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Schalheim. Okay, so we move on now to item 7.01, installation of consent items, installation of burners and water heaters. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize the award of contract 23-092, installation of burners and water heaters. It's a cooperative agreement through Baltimore County Public Schools to Flowtron Contracting, Inc. in the amount of $850,000.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Seeing no lights, except an old one from Ms. Ellis. Yeah. Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Bent?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Moving on to Section 8 action items. Item 8.01, Administrative Personnel Appointments. Dr. Bedell.
The superintendent recommends that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
So moved.
Second.
Seeing no lights. Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Policy revisions, first reading, item 8.02, non-discrimination, Code AC. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you. This will be the first reading for this policy, non-discrimination. AC is the policy letters. Before being posted on the website for a 30-day public comment period. And so we have Ms. Ortiz here to take us through this first reading.
Good evening. For the record, I can see far away.
Yeah.
Not so much in front of me. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. So as Superintendent Bedell mentioned, we have Policy AC, non-discrimination before you. This may seem a little familiar because we just recently updated it on December 15th of last year. However, the General Assembly also had non-discrimination in mind this past legislative session, and they passed a law that spoke to non-discrimination, and we've actually, tracked that legislation in the past. Essentially, it was more focused on private schools that receive funding from the state for education. And so, of course, it covers all schools, private and public. And so our non-discrimination policy was in pretty good shape, but there were a few things that we needed to add. And the two are making it clear that a school cannot or prohibiting a school from refusing to enroll a student because of specified characteristics. And so we're thinking of protected classes here. And then also clearly stating that retaliatory actions are prohibited. So I just needed to include that language in the policy. And so as Dr. Bedell mentioned, it will be on our website for a 30-day public comment period, and I can answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I see no lights. So with that, no action needed from us.
Nope, it will go on the 30-day public comment period. The timeline is there on the screen. It will be on second reading at the November 2nd meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. All right. Item 8.03, virtual day instruction plan for inclement weather. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. We are at the point where I'm recommending the approval of the virtual day instruction plan as presented to the Board of Education on September 7, 2022. It's important to note that the hopeful approval of this item is another tool in our toolbox for us to use in case we have to use it. And so I have staff up here ready to field any questions or anything that you may have. And we've already conducted extensive engagement. We've gotten a tremendous amount of feedback. So we are ready to move forward with the board taking action on this item.
Thank you. Good
Just for the
evening.
record, Bob Mosier, Chief Communications Officer, joined by Dr. Maureen McMahon, Deputy Superintendent for Academics and Strategic Initiatives. We do have slides prepared for you just to review if you wish to review them, but I did want to answer the question that Ms. Frank posed at the last meeting, which was about whether we had to use the 3 days built into the calendar at the end of the year before even having the opportunity to use any virtual days. And the answer to that is we do not. All right, so that's not the case. So happy to answer questions or run through a review, whatever you'd like to have happen.
I see a light, Ms. Corkadell.
Mr. Measure, did you receive any insight from the state as it related to some of the other questions that we had raised in the previous meeting?
Specifically,
I'm trying to remember how I worded it. It was my question, and you said, actually, I brought it up too, and that you were going to follow up. But it related to, hold on a second. I just lost my train of thought. Can you believe it? It was with, it had to do with closures due to communicable diseases and
Yes.
similar incidences.
I did, yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, we are fine there. As we discussed last time, we're fine. That would not count toward this.
Okay, so
Right.
that would sit separately. Okay.
That becomes a medical issue, Department of Health mandated issue,
Okay.
or recommended issue. I shouldn't say the word mandated.
Mhm. I do have a brief statement to make after we're done with Q&A.
Okay.
Right to mention that. Thank you.
I don't see other lights. I had a couple of questions I just wanted to pose. We did get extensive public comment. So based on some of that, I'm sorry, Ms. Frank, I see your light. Okay, I'll jump in here and then come back to you for your questions. The implications for a teacher working on what is determined to be a virtual day when staff is not reporting to the buildings, how does that work in terms of?
So if Dr. Bedell was to decide to use one of these virtual instruction days, synchronous virtual instruction days, then students would have been advised to take their Chromebooks home, and teachers, of course, would have been advised to take their laptops home. And so they would have put a Google Meet link inside Brightspace, just like they had done all last year and in the prior years, so that the students could click on the Google Meet link and join them live for instruction. Some teachers will choose to put more materials or activities, but that's the minimum in order to have students engage with them during virtual days.
Mhm. But how would that affect their work days? In other words, they're working on a day that staff who are not having to report.
So a virtual day would count as a work day. So right now, I'll just pick a day, February 3rd, right? So February 3rd is a work day for teachers, assuming it's a weekday.
Right.
In the calendar. So if it snows and we opt to do virtual instruction, it's that same workday.
Okay.
You're just working virtually. And the trade-off is that a snow day in February is a school day in June. So if you save the snow day in February, then you would take that day off the end of the year.
And as it now stands, the end of the year, the teachers, I'm trying to remember, they leave and then they come back, right?
So the last day of school for students is Friday, the 16th of June, currently, with the 3 days built in.
Right.
So the last day for teachers is Tuesday, the 20th, because Monday, the 19th is Juneteenth.
Is Juneteenth, right.
So if you were to save one day, right, you would save that. I mean, teachers, the last day would then be Friday, the 16th.
So they basically save 3 days.
You for sure
okay.
would. Mhm.
All right. And the other thing is, there were a couple of comments, or at least one that raised a question that I thought was interesting about the virtual academy and the fact that presumably there's a bank of curriculum associated with the virtual academy. Is that something we could make available in some way to our teachers to set up their?
It's a good question. The virtual academy uses our curriculum, just as do all of our teachers in Anne Arundel County. So they are preparing lessons as any teacher would be preparing lessons. And they have a community of learners that they teach. And so they would not have anything more to offer than a teacher would have if they just went to our curriculum and were bringing it down for the day. The really good news, though, here is a teacher would be prepared for the week of lessons. They would be prepared. And so if we knew a storm was coming, as we often do, and Thursday was going to most likely be the day out, and Dr. Bedell makes the call because it's supposed to be a dusting of snow, then that teacher who was ready for the in-person instruction, although there might be a slight adjustment, their preparation would serve them well for actively using that same lesson in Google Meet with some change to it, but not an entire replacement lesson needed. So, but it's a good question you're asking.
Okay. Now, I see some lights from my colleagues. I believe Ms. Corkadell had a comment. Who else has questions at this point? You do? Ms. Ellis? Ms. Corkadell, you still have a question? Or is that what you were saying, or you have comment?
More comment.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to do the,
It depends.
yeah, if something comes up, but I'm trying to do the first round, second round.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no.
So Ms. Ellis, you have questions. Ms. Frank, you have questions. And Ms. Schallheim, you have questions. Okay, so Ms. Ellis?
This is just real basic. It's simply to connect the dots in case anyone is confused. The plan being recommended by the superintendent, Dr. Bedell, is the plan that was presented to us at the last meeting. There's been no changes after community feedback or anything like that.
Correct. And if it would help for me, I'll summarize it very briefly for you.
Yes, I'm just explaining
So it-
why I don't think a presentation is necessary. You just
Sure.
presented it last meeting.
So it
Thank you.
is, the state opens up a pathway where you can use up to 8 days. No more than 3 can be asynchronous. We have opted, Dr. Bedell has opted to only apply them to cases of inclement weather and to apply no more than 3 in any marking period.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Frank?
And then if we approve this plan, this is just for this year, and we would have to approve another plan next year, or?
Well, so the pathway that MSD created is just for this year. So
Just
we
for
would
this
have
year,
to wait to see what their pathway is. But, certainly we'll have conversations about that. And I should also take the opportunity to say your approval tonight then sends the plan to MSDE, and the state superintendent must approve it for us to be able to use any of the virtual days.
Okay, and it says no days can be used before approval by the board and state superintendent.
Right.
But that's just approval of the plan. That's not getting into which days will get approved later.
Correct.
That's under the
It's
purview
approval of the framework.
specifically. Yeah.
Right. And I asked, and we were told that that should come very rapidly should the board approve this tonight.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Schallheim?
I just have a clarifying question. So we're not looking to take away any kid's joy. If you can pick it up and throw it, and it's a legit snow day.
So I don't know if you want to build the box with if you can pick it up and throw it. Okay. But I think Dr. Bedell's been clear, and we tried to be clear in our presentation last time, right? So no one should construe this as eliminating snow days. There's no automatic elimination of it.
And that's absolutely correct. I mean, that was part of the reason why we also took a look at an amended schedule, so we wouldn't take away the joy. But this also, the platform offers flexibility. So you may have a teacher that may say, hey, you all need to log on at this time. There may be a window when kids need to log on. So, it's a lot of flexibility, but the ultimate goal is to not have people, first of all, I don't want kids on a device 8 hours. That's not cool. And so at the end of the day, the reason for us making this recommendation of an amended abbreviated schedule is so that we can get our instruction in still, but also allow for students and families to be able to enjoy those weather days. So that's, and then also not put people in further hardship by having to extend the year. That made it difficult for everybody having to end school at the end of June, and then at the end of June, and then just a few weeks later, we're right back in school at the end of August. So that's the primary reason too.
Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Dent, did you have a question?
I do. And a comment. The question that I have for you though is about the educators themselves. I'm just thinking of me and when my children are home with me and I'm trying to do something, and they're grown.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just thinking, I don't know, when you have the snow, they have children as well and they can't take them. So we had a lot of complaints during COVID about, how how educators were instructing, if you will, over the video, that kind of stuff. So how is that kind of addressed so that they are able to, number one, take care of their families as well as do the instructions?
So we took into account that exact information from during the pandemic, right? And so we placed breaks in the morning and in the afternoon. We honored the flex period. So we kept flex in so students could get academic support, but they could also join a club. And then we placed a 45-minute lunch period during the middle of the day, overlapping, not perfectly overlapping, but overlapping because parents told us the high schoolers need, or the middle schoolers need to help my elementary student get lunch prepared. And so we have the secondary students in our draft plan having lunch a little earlier so they can prepare, but a 45-minute period. So if you wanted to go out in the snow in the middle of the day, you actually could. And then the day ends differently for the different groups, just like it did during the pandemic, but nobody goes later than 2:30.
Okay. And
So
overall, how many hours of instruction?
So MSDE requires that there has to be 4 synchronous hours. And then with that 45 minutes, you can't count the lunch. So it's 4 hours and 45 minutes. And then to make our day work, it ends up being 5 hours and 5 minutes or something like that. So we really kept it as lean as we could so kids would have a chance to enjoy the day.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. McGrath, is your light on for a question? Okay. All right. So Ms. Corkadell.
Yes, thank you guys. When the state started talking about this during the pandemic and opportunities, I was excited because I think there is opportunities there. That being said, I have digested some of the concerns and some of the comments, and recognizing some of the challenges that we faced, I'm not convinced that we are going to land where we think we want to land with this, Dr. Bedell, because our ability to get the students stabilized into the virtual environment was a Herculean effort, and it required us to make sure that each and every single student had and was able to maintain some sort of connectivity. We've removed ourselves from that and our families and our students, and some of those grants and the ARPA monies and some of the other things have expired. And so I'm sitting here feeling a little concerned, and the teachers, as Ms. Den had pointed out, is also weighing a little heavy on me. It's not every teacher has teacher family has a spouse that can assist or siblings that are older that can assist. And that was one of the really big mental and social emotional concerns that we had. And it's not from developing a well-thought, well-constructed plan that has considered everything. This is one of those where I'm kind of working with my heart here a little bit. And I understand that benefit, but I also understand that there is going to be a percentage of folks that are not going to be in a better place. And in an instruction day, that means instruction is occurring and the students are accountable. When I overlay any inclement weather, I have yet to see one that's genuine, not the ones that didn't map out, right? Well, so we call it, that to me would make sense. But that's a small part of the plan. And when I'm looking at power outages, even if everybody does have that connectivity, because the prices have gone up. Many families of ours are now looking at bills and saying, what do I have to pay and not have to pay? Some of them have to use daycare, and some of our daycare facilities are open during inclement weather days to help those working families and those families who are in conditions. Our first assignment workers, uniquely different from our regular virtual, are now having to go on call, and they're now working double time and extra time. Not all those providers, we know from experience, were able to provide that support to that student for an actual instruction day. So I am struggling to ultimately say yes in the vote, not because the product being produced here and being presented lacks anything, but as I'm weighing what the pros and the cons and the consequences, I am seriously considering those folks, because it really do no harm. And we've got kids now with the learning loss as a result of that. I just, I see a lot of holes that I don't know that we can fill or are in a position to fill at this time. But the internet connectivity, the power outages, and our teachers are the three things weighing heavily on me. Ultimately.
So thank you for your comments. And it's something that we've all considered, as you point out, but just for the folks watching or listening, to be clear, the state's pathway requires, and our plan includes, a provision that no student's grade can be negatively impacted by a virtual day, and a school system must offer what it calls a meaningful in-person opportunity to make up any of that work.
What does that look like? So if I miss, and then I'm coming back, because a teacher doesn't have any spare minutes anymore. Our principals are, directing traffic and the sides and the bright space and all of that.
So it would depend on what the teacher chose to do during the virtual instruction day.
Okay.
But it would most likely look that the secondary student would be engaged in flex block, in an AM or a PM flex block, to revisit material that might have been shared, or or go to a tutoring session. The time in the virtual day, of course, is reduced, the instructional time. And so for any student who misses, there would be an opportunity during that week or into the next week for makeup.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis?
Yes, I just want to thank everyone involved in developing this plan. I think it's as good as it can be. We certainly read the comments from the public. We were getting input before the plan even came out. As with anything, there's going to be people who are happy and people who aren't. There are some people who are just very, very against any sort of virtual instruction, and I understand their apprehensions. But the amount of flexibility that this plan provides us is, I think, exactly what our students need. I think, who in here remembers, was it 2010 that the schools were closed for the entire week? So, the idea, if you can pick it up and throw it, well, you could pick it up on Monday and you could still pick it up on Friday and throw it. But at some point you don't want to impact the school year too much. So I greatly appreciate what this offers, and I'm fully in support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. So with the understanding that this is the first plan that would be going forward, and that next year there may be opportunity for a different plan or a revised plan, I would be in support of this, just with the understanding that as we sort of tweak it and as we sort of move through it, things that I personally would want to see are some guardrails enshrining. I did like the 3 days because it did guarantee snow days. And Dr. Bedell, I trust that you are going to follow through when you say you understand the magic of snow. But I would hate to be the board member that opens the door for superintendents later to go down a slippery slope and may not have the same thoughts. Yeah, you know. So I would just either A, want to, I missed something, but okay. I would A, want to just include that in future plans, or B, maybe move it into policy that we have something consistent. And I would be happy with it, however we sort of manage that. But at this point, I do think that this is a good plan at this time. And in the future, those are ways that I think that I would be more comfortable voting as we fine tune it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath.
Thank you. So I just want to bring the student perspective to this, and I really appreciate all the work you put into this. And I think this is a good plan, but this is supposed to benefit the students. And of course, there are going to be like a few students who really appreciate this plan, but the vast majority of students I talk to, this is the first time they've ever engaged with me because that was how big of a deal it was to them. They really do not appreciate having to do virtual schooling on a snow day. Students came up to me and said that they would rather just miss school altogether than engage in a virtual day on a snow day. I was told by some teachers that they felt it would be difficult to manage their domestic side of their life and the professional side of their life on a snow day. I was just met with a lot of hesitancy to this plan. And this is supposed to benefit the students, but I don't think it's really benefiting the students because they want to have that day off. They want to have a day in the middle of the year where they can just forget about school for a little bit, be a kid. And I would just be remiss if I was a student member of the board that allowed, that voted for a plan that would prevent future generations from having as many snow days as I did. I feel like it's just such a critical part of being a student, such a critical part of childhood that it doesn't align with my view of this, but I do appreciate this plan. You obviously did put a lot of effort into this, so I thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to say comment?
I definitely want to respond to that because I totally understand a student's perspective and the purpose of us making this recommendation also protects the students on the back end. I think everybody in this room knows what happened with those extended days at the end of this school year. People that flat out just didn't come to school. People started their vacations. I'm not certain instruction was as strong as it would have been had instruction been delivered even for 4 hours during a snow day. And I just think, on the back end of it, I think it does far more damage to kids than it does to help them now while they're in the middle of learning standards that many of them will need to get that reinforcement before they take a state assessment. Once that state assessment is taken, it's over. I mean, let's just call it what it is. And there's not going to be a whole bunch happening at the end of the year. But I am absolutely, I will be mindful of that. We did this in my previous school district, and there were days when we knew, okay, the snow is going to be pretty bad. Let's just go on ahead and let them have a snow day, right? So this isn't going to be, and there will be days where there's close calls where we will just say, hey, we need to execute this plan. But if we know there's going to be a significant amount of snow and those kind of things, I think we'll make the right decision. And I think that's what I would leave with everybody as you think about, this particular plan.
Thank you. Mr. Silkworth.
I think the key word here is flexibility, and Dr. Bedell has just indicated that he will make sure that he uses that. I have every confidence in Dr. Bedell to make wise decisions based upon the weather circumstances. So I don't think our students are going to miss. They may miss some, but I don't think they're going to miss all their snow days. So I do have a motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the virtual day instruction plan for inclement weather.
Second. I think we have a second.
Just pick one of those.
Ms. Ellis, you still have a light on. Usually Ms. Ellis is the bright light of the board, right?
Punny, very punny.
Seeing no lights, Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Nay.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent? Mr. McGrath?
Nay.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
That's 5-2 motion. I'm sorry, 6-2 motion passes.
Did we lose one? Okay. Thank you. Moving on now to item 8.04, Broadneck Elementary School third-party project digital marquee. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. The superintendent recommends approval of the Broadneck Elementary School third-party project digital marquee. And before you all take action, I just want to extend a huge thanks to the Broadneck Elementary School PTO for coming together and helping to get this digital LED display on the school site. We often say this over and over and over, schools can't do it alone. And this is a prime example of community coming together and trying to help serve the best interests of their local schools and their local community. So I just wanted to thank all of the individuals that put in time and resources to make this happen.
So moved.
Okay. Those were your lights, I gather.
Well, I just wanted to.
Yeah. Would you like to say something, Ms. Schallheim?
Yeah. I love approving projects like these where, you know, you have collaboration between the PTO or PTA or PTSA and the administrators of the school, meeting the school's needs, working hand in glove is really cool to see. So obviously I'm going to be an eye on this one. And it's neat to see these come before us every now and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Actually, Ms. Schallheim took my comments exactly, but it was expected. That's what I expected you to say. But this is such a great example of what, how a PTA can really benefit their school. So I greatly appreciate these projects. Thank you.
Yes, and if I can take a moment of privilege just to say thank you to the Broadneck Elementary School PTO, but to all the PTOs and PTAs and PTSAs out there who do such phenomenal work for our students. I was at the Annapolis High PTSA meeting last night, and everybody's out there doing a lot of work. So thank you. Thank you. So seeing no more lights, Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item 8.05, FY 2023 Capital Budget Supplemental. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends approval of the FY 2023 supplemental capital budget appropriation for the security-related upgrades, maintenance, backlog, and roof replacement submissions to the county executive and county council.
So moved.
Second.
Seeing no lights, Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item 8.06, 2023 Comprehensive Maintenance Plan. Dr. Bedell.
The superintendent recommends approval of the fiscal year 2023 comprehensive maintenance plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, seeing no lights, Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Item 8.07, Superintendent's recommended FY 2024 capital budget and 6-year capital improvement plan. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. This item was presented to the board in a recent workshop. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education adopt the FY 2024 capital budget, 6-year plan, and state capital improvement plan.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I see no lights. Ms. Howe?
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Shawhine?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Abstain.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 701.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second? Anybody? Do I have consensus? Good night, everyone. Have a good night.